Okay, so real quick, I commented on what's it called on the community event before, and I just want to say that I don't know if that joke comes off as being in poor taste now because of what just happened, but I didn't have to bring it up. But I will say the hand logo at the end also. I think that's very obvious of the overall time that we're in. People, what's going on? We're back with yet another watch along, part two of Shocktober. If you guys don't know what that is, then you clearly don't watch movies and you haven't been listening to what I've been saying at the end of each and every one of our podcast episodes. But Chris, we're here. We're back. It's another Shocktober watch along. And tell the people what it is that we're watching tonight.
Well, tonight we are watching Saw, and before we go any further, I just want to, Joe of Guy at the Movies, a really good friend of Dom and I, someone we've gotten to know really well over the course of this quarantine. Actually, the whole reason, for those of you who don't know, why we call this a community event and not a film festival is because we found this community during this quarantine, and it gave us so much in a time where we needed just something, and it ended up just being kind of like the saving grace of this past year. So Joe was a big part of that, and that's why we wanted him to host. Unfortunately, he had some family emergencies come up, and family comes first always. So guys, please go check out Guy at the Movies. He does Quizzos, which are weekly trivia matches, over on his Instagram. He does interviews with honestly some pretty big names in the film industry. You can find all that stuff on his Instagram at Guy at the Movies and on his YouTube channel, Guy at the Movies. And we just want to send our best wishes to Joe and his family tonight. And this one's for Joe and his family because he put this whole thing together. So let's give him a show worthy of what he set up. That's all we have to do here tonight, Dom. That's my number one mission right now.
Look, I think we've already accomplished that mission just with the two of us being here. Because again, as much as Joe shows on screen that he clearly hates me, off screen, we are best of friends. And I wish him and his family all the best. Again, it sucks that these things happen, and they always happen last minute, but they do happen. And as Chris said, to quote Dominic Toretto from the Fast and Furious, Chris's favorite film franchise ever, family. I had to. It's such an easy joke, but I go to it every single time. So, Chris, we're not alone. As you said, this is a community event. So I don't know about you. I hate drawing these things out longer than they need to be. Let's bring the people in one by one. Who do we have on tonight joining us for Saw?
Cool. First, and certainly not least, and I know I did that wrong. It was intentional. We're going to bring in Sean of Math Teacher Movies, also Joe's co-host of their weekly podcast. Sean, what's going on, man? How you doing?
What's going on, dude? Nice to meet you in person.
How you doing? It's great to see you guys. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely, dude. Yeah.
So, Sean, what is it you do here on the interwebs? You know, tell people a little bit about yourself before we jump into this thing.
So a year or two ago, I realized that I was talking way too much about movies on my personal Instagram, and it was probably annoying way too many people. So I talked to my girlfriend, now fiance, hold for applause, I just said to myself, all right, you know what? I want to make my own Instagram, and she has done the same thing in a fitness sense, like for fitness topics. So she told me, absolutely start doing this, get into it. And so from there, I started, reviewing movies from the past and present. I started going over a little bit of a monologue Monday, what the Oscars got wrong Wednesday, and a final shot Friday, because I love alliteration.
I love those names. I love those names. I'm glad we got another alliteration guy in here. And this guy's a math teacher too.
What? Yeah, he's a math teacher, dude. This guy's got so many talents.
Yeah,
I understand that makes me a public enemy number one. Usually, when I am the math teacher, I try to make math accessible to kids. But when I'm not teaching math, I am definitely spending the rest of my time watching movies, and then occasionally glancing over and looking at my fiance for a couple of minutes and saying a few words to her, but then going right back to movies and TV.
Nice, man. Well, hey, congratulations on the engagement. That's awesome. And, we're wishing you all the best. And I think you are an English teacher somewhere deep down inside, but you chose
I definitely am.
math, and that's okay. Guys, welcome. Normally there's just one of them, but tonight she has her sister with her. Welcome, the Basic Cinephile and Company. What's going on, guys? Thanks for joining.
Hello.
For the money, what's going on? Let the people know, who are you? What is it that you do on your channel?
I'm Zianna.
And I'm Edelia.
And we are the Basic Cinephile. And we are sisters, obviously. So we do everything together, including posts about movies on the internet. So I have a ton of respect for Sean as a math teacher, because I am a former history teacher,
That's
and
history.
I'm
Okay.
not anymore.
I was about to say.
We'll just leave it at that.
All right, definitely, yeah. Mysterious past and all that, yeah, definitely. No, that's awesome. Yeah, later on we're gonna be getting into each and everyone's individual relationship with horror, and that's gonna be specifically with this movie. That's gonna be interesting. Chris, who do we have next?
Well, we have more people, but before we do that, shout out your account. Where can the people find you?
Duh.
You can find us at The Basic Cinephile on Instagram, on TikTok, and on Twitter.
Perfect. And you guys know us. The links to everyone's information will be in the description after the stream. So check back and go and give them a sub, a follow, whatever it is they prefer. Because hey, there's not one universal language on the internet, and it's kind of
that's
confusing.
for
But
damn
we
sure.
can't control that. Next up is another new face to the channel. First time joining us. Everyone, please welcome Robbie Sobel. What's going on, Robbie?
How's it going, guys? Thank you for having me on your watch along here. Big fan of this entire franchise, so this is gonna be fun.
Dude, it's gonna be a good night, man. I love Halloween. I think it's something that I've grown to love, because when I was younger, I was always afraid and terrified. But then I think the whole missing trick or treating and then feeling like, whoa, like, hey, you actually do get older as time goes on, and it starts to feel like you're getting older. Then I was like, I gotta latch. For some reason, I started latching on to Halloween. So it's just like right now, I'd probably be hanging out with friends, hanging out with a bunch of people in real life. We obviously can't do that because safety matters, but we're happy to have you here with us, Robbie. So why don't you let people know where they can find you and what it is you do here on the internet, man?
Well, I'm a big horror movie guy. That's kind of my bread and butter. Reviews and rankings with Robbie Sobel is on YouTube, Instagram at Robbie_upgrade. I do reviews, I do rankings, I do trailer reactions. I even have my kids now. I've just started to introduce them into different horror films. My daughter is 8, my son is 13. They get a little scared, but we have some fun with it. What I'm going to be pumping out over the next couple of weeks is I'm going to show retro horror movie trailers to them and get their reviews, their reaction to them. So we're going to have some fun.
Nice, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely be on the lookout for that. And thank you again for joining us.
Thanks
And
for the invite.
guys, last but certainly not least, you know him. We love him. It's been a while since he's been on the channel, but we are happy to have him back. Ankit, man, of the Casual Moviegoer. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. Thank you for that introduction. I don't deserve it at all, but thank you for having me.
Why do you do that? Why do you do
I'm
that?
humble.
Why do you
I'm
put yourself
humble.
down like
I'm
that?
humble,
Come
man.
on, man.
I
Come on, man.
have only 2 modes: extremely arrogant or humble. I can only pick one, so I'm gonna go humble.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, just don't go Andy Samberg humble on us. That's all I ask.
Thank you for having me back. It's been a minute since I've seen Saw, and I love the first 2 movies. I'll be honest. I haven't seen the rest because I started watching the third one, and I was like, oh, this is not good at all. So I'm excited to go back and watch.
Oh, I have a feeling that
I know.
similar to Star Wars, you and I are gonna have a very similar reaction to this movie.
I'm sure it's gone a lot better. I will say I do enjoy the lore of Saw. I went through the whole Wikipedia page and like read what happened in every movie because I do appreciate like the long-term storytelling that they've done. But anyways, the first Saw is amazing, and I'm excited to watch it. In terms of my page, I am the Casual Moviegoer. I specialize in 60-second movie reviews, and I've also started turning out original movie memes and reels. And yeah, other than that, just shit posting on the internet seems to be my bread and butter.
No, your Instagram account is very entertaining, dude. I mean, the way that you can summarize a film so elegantly in 60 seconds versus how long it sometimes takes Dom and I to barely hit all the things we have to say about a movie in an hour plus.
And we know that I talk fast. It is like on the
Yeah.
record. We know that I talk fast, and you still beat me to it.
Honestly, man, it's I actually love the 60-second format for that very reason. You know, you need those creative limits sometimes. If you have too much time, you just ramble, you know? So sometimes being some constraints just gets you to the gold. Right.
No, man, it's truly something to marvel at, guys. Go
Thank
check
you.
out everyone's account, and yeah, thank you again for being here. We have some people in the chat. We got to shout the chat out first, of course. We got Luke of Luke Reviews, who's going to be with us on Halloween evening in our costume contest watch along of Halloween 1978. Yeah, Jamie Lee Curtis, we announced it 2 weeks before you. You definitely bit off our idea, and that's not cool.
Yeah, right.
But hopefully you guys come to the real, official, unofficial
Jamie
Halloween
Lee
watch
Curtis,
along.
you're already famous. It's like you don't need to rip us off. We haven't even got a chance to get to your level. Give the underdogs a chance here.
Exactly. Chris Snyder in the chat. Chris, thanks for hanging.
What up, Chris?
And Luke says the humble moviegoer. I like it a lot.
The brand.
Oh man,
It works.
That is good. So I mean, guys, I'd say if you guys are all cool with it, why don't we start this film in a few seconds here? I can do.
Well, actually, real quick, hold on. First things first, I just wanted to ask before we get in, because this is kind of a thing I noticed Joe, David, these guys like to get into it a little bit before we actually get to the movie. So before we start it, we hinted at it a little bit, but I just want to go around everyone's round table, starting with Ankit and then going around. I want to hear everyone's personal relationship with this movie, specifically this franchise, because I think it's safe to say it's pretty hit or miss as far as that goes. So starting with Ankit, what is your relationship with Saw and this franchise?
Yeah, so like I already said, the first two Saw movies, I absolutely adore. I would say Saw is maybe one of the few horror movies I watched when I was younger. I did not enjoy horror up until honestly like a year ago. I was shit scared of pretty much every movie out there, but the others and Saw and Grudge are like the few movies I saw when I was a kid. So yes, Saw has a lasting impression on me. Has everyone seen the movie? I don't want to say something if anyone has this. Okay, there's this one part of the movie. It's not a spoiler. There's somebody who's like hiding in a closet, and it's terrified me as a kid. I remember after I saw that movie, I went to my bedroom and I like opened the closet doors because I was like, okay, I have to make sure nothing's here. So I think that's a testament to how good the movie is, that it can like break through the screen and actually like impact me on a more emotional level. But yes, as I said, after the third Saw movie, I did not keep up.
It's like that's when the tuner goes out, and then they make 8 movies. You're like, oh great, this is the next franchise that fell victim to this. All right, going around next, at least from my end, Robbie, what is your relationship with Saw and the franchise and just horror in general?
You know, horror is my number one love. My entire movie room here is just horror themed. Have over 1,000 horror movies on Blu-ray and DVD. I have horror tattoos. I make the convention rounds. And when Saw first came out, October 2004, I was 20. And the years leading up to that, we were just getting almost kind of rip-offs of Scream. Mm-hmm. And they were just getting diluted and diluted and diluted to the point where horror was really kind of just frowned upon. And then this movie comes out, this little independent horror film, and it really changed the game, I think, and it set horror on a different direction. And it's a landmark film for that decade. And even if you're not a big fan of this film, of this franchise, I think you have to give credit where credit is due for how it completely changed the genre. And if you look at the people that were involved with it, I mean, James Wan, no one heard of James Wan before this movie. And now he's a huge director, not just in horror, but he did Aquaman, I believe.
Yep.
And whatnot. And then look at Lee Winnell, who co-wrote this film, co-starred in this film, and not the best actor. I'm glad he stuck to writing and directing.
Yeah, to say the least.
Because, I mean, he went on to direct The Invisible Man, which is one of the best films of this year. 2018, he put out Upgrade, which is a fantastic
great movie.
Not enough people know about this movie.
Agreed.
Watch this movie. It is amazing. I believe they're actually turning it into a TV series, which is going to be interesting.
We'll see. Again, there's a lot of mentions of like movies that may or may not get TV show adaptations. My whole stance on that is I'll believe it when I see it.
And then we also have Danny Glover. So
yeah, I mean, yeah. Wait,
so there we go.
Yeah,
I saw almost all of them in the theater. I own all of them, and I think it's a great franchise that in horror.
All right, Robbie, the horror aficionado of this chat. Definitely looking forward to hear your more specific thoughts on it as we go on throughout the movie. And also, I just wanted to say I fully sympathize with you. I was like one of like the only people who actually saw Upgrade when it came out in theaters, and it shocked the hell out of me as far as that goes. And I'm like, I tried to tell everyone to go to see it, and nobody was talking about it until 2 years later when The Invisible Man came out. And I'm like, you know what? Fine, I'll take it as my validation. All right, next up on the docket, I'm just gonna christen. I know it's not the official name, but I'm gonna christen you girls the Cinephile sisters. What's it called? I think it works.
I love that.
I think it works.
That works too.
That's it. The Cinephile sisters, and also I think it sounds like spooky and it's the vibe of everything that's going on. What is your relationship with Saw, with this franchise, and just with horror in general?
So we're going from Robbie, who is like horror kid.
Yeah, he's pretty. Yeah.
We have no relationship with horror.
Real sensitive kids growing up. So really, horror has only been added in the last like couple of years. Saw Scream for the first time last year, so hot take, I liked it. But that's
we've never seen it, and me especially, but both of us, I am terrified of everything. So I'm a little nervous to watch this, but also excited because like it's such an iconic movie, and so I'm like, even though I never watch scary movies, like I've seen it like referenced and parodied so many times, so I'm excited to finally see what the story is actually about besides just that creepy clown mask. Yeah.
Well, the only thing that I have to say is I hope you're ready to play a game. That's all I'm going to say there. I'm not going to do the voice because that would just be wrong of me on so many different levels. And again, I like the different relationships that we have with horror that we're going to get into. I can't wait to get into mine personally. That's not just because I have an ego. It's because I do genuinely think it's an interesting story involved there. Next on the docket, Sean of Math Teacher Movies. Explain your relationship with Saw, this franchise, and horror in general.
Well, I guess after what I just heard, I would like to consider myself as the third cinephile sister, because I have also had...
It works!
I have had absolutely no relationship with horror growing up. I'm going to put a caveat on that, though, because pretty much, my folks got me into movies. They showed me all the classics. That's where I started to love them. And they never liked horror, so therefore I never liked horror. And then I realized, I was like scared stiff when I would see like a trailer to a horror movie or the cover of a horror movie at a video store. Yes, kids, video store. And so I think about like those things, and I really like, and I said to myself, I'm terrified of horror until 2 years ago. And then I started watching some of the horror in theaters. And these are some of the modern horrors, and probably they're not as scary as the other ones. But since then, I've loved those. So then I have looked back, and I have slowly walked back on different horror. Right now, the Criterion Channel, if you are not subscribed to the Criterion Channel, do that immediately. They are going through all of the 70s horror, and I'm watching things like The Hills Have Eyes and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time ever.
Dude.
Amazing.
It's my film school experience that you're getting now. I love it.
Wonderful. I mean, it's the grainiest of grainy, and I'm having a grainy time. And then, the problem is that there's these iconic horrors like Saw and as the aforementioned Scream that I've never seen before. And now, not because I'm avoiding them, but just because they have not been presented to me right on my lap. Because when we have streaming, it needs to be presented right on my lap. I need to watch, otherwise, if I have to go and actually type in letters to find movies, are you kidding me? I'm not doing that.
Never going to happen. Who does that? Who does that?
I mean, come on. So I am actually rewatching the Scream movies right now on we're calling it Scream Watch on the Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean, available on Wednesdays, wherever you get your podcasts. And we're going through those. Oh, very subtle. I've been called subtle many times. So pretty much now I'm going through these Saws, and I'm welcome to start these as well. So that is my extraordinarily long-winded explanation of horror and Saw in general.
Dude, if you think that was long-winded, you clearly haven't seen shit yet. That's all I'm going to say as far as that goes. Again, I'll dock myself at the door and I'll go last. Chris, next. Your relationship with this franchise and with horror in general, even though I know it pretty much. But explain it for the people here what it is.
Sure, yeah. I got into horror, I would say, about 4 years ago, right when I entered film school in 2016. And, a little backstory for all of our new friends here. Met Dom for better or for worse, as they say. And
still deciding on which it is.
I met this kid called Tyler, who's a good friend of mine. We went on to be roommates in college. And when I was living with him, he would put on horror movies almost every night. And I really just would sit down and watch them because, that's what you do when you live with someone and there's only one living room. You get there first. And unfortunately, his class ended before mine, so I didn't sleep much that semester. But I did grow a really, really big appreciation for a genre that I had otherwise avoided. And so that's why we're here right now. That's why we're doing Shocktober. I've only seen the first Saw movie. I've seen it a couple times. It's got some of my favorite actors in it, and not some of the bigger names that you guys would think. I'm more so talking about
the
Michael
Lost
Emerson.
actors.
Yeah, Michael Emerson and Ken Leung, because dude, if you're in Lost, you can do no wrong in my heart, and I think these guys killed it in this movie, and I can't wait to get into this. So yeah, Dom, what is your relationship with horror, and more specifically, the Saw franchise?
Chris, your Lost addiction never ceases to amaze me. I know we've been literally talking about Lindelof and Lost and all the Lost co-stars throughout the entire year. We literally just did an episode on it, like not even a half an hour ago, where I mentioned it multiple times, so it's clearly spread into me a bit, but still, never ceases to amaze me. My relationship with horror. So, unfortunately, to the chagrin of all the horror fans on there, again, I was not a fan of horror for the longest time. The problem was that even when I started to get into horror movies, I still wasn't into horror, because the problem is that around the same time that I actually started watching a ton of horror movies was the same time that I got into film school. And I had a professor who was a diehard horror fan. Like, this professor was only supposed to spend about a third of the semester talking about horror movies, specifically slasher movies, and she spent like 3/4 of the semester talking about that. I think we only spent like the last couple weeks actually watching like other movies that like weren't horror related. That's how much she was into it. And the problem with that is that it kind of only always reinforced what I thought was a very repetitive genre of subsection of horror, that being the slasher genre, where again, there was a reason why there has been parody after parody after parody after parody made about that. Again, I've got a little bit ruined. I watched Scary Movie before I watched Scream, and that is why I can't take Scream seriously. I can't do it. Every time I do, I just think of Marlon Wayne's dumbass inhaling fucking weed smoke out of the hole in his lung. It's ridiculous. I can't do it. And so that's why, to me, my go-to for horror has always been the deconstruction is hard, the parodies. But not just the parodies, the satires, I would more so say. Again, we're watching Tucker and Dale versus Evil next week on AJ's channel. Definitely check that out if you guys are going to be there already. And I love that movie. Cabin in the Woods, to me, is one of the most brilliant pieces of cinema that I've seen, like, just ever, in general. That movie, oh my God. I'll go on a whole tangent about how tragically underrated that movie is. But the point being is that a couple years ago, specifically 2017, I actually started to watch some movies in theaters. They were straight up horror movies. They were not parodies. Well, one of which was a comedy. But these were actually genuine horror movies. And I was like, okay, these are actually really good. And they've actually got some really intriguing stories and some really fucking good tension. And I actually kind of like these characters, which is shocking because I usually don't like horror movie characters. There's a reason why, because they're usually just disposable body bags there in order to take up space until the killer inevitably gets them. But I watched Split and Get Out in the beginning of 2017. I was like, okay, so this shows what the horror genre can do. Then, unfortunately, I had to sit through 2 Ari Aster slogfests. That's a conversation for a different day. And then, again, it's just all these different crazy types of movies that showed me, okay, horror can be more than the tropes. Yes, I know what you're going to say, Sean. Not a big fan of Ari Aster. Not at all.
You didn't like Hereditary?
In a little bit. I just need to classify. The first 2/3 of Hereditary are great. The last third is awful.
I'll give you that. I got you there.
So, yeah. That's just what I wanted to say there. And as for the Saw movies, specifically, that was a long tangent just about horror in general, so I'll make this next one brief. Saw, I watched the first 2 when I was up at school, and I'm just going to go right out there. Not a big fan. I was looking forward to this rewatch for a lot of different reasons that I think everyone else was. All I'm going to say, without spoiling too much, is that, again, specifically both of the first 2 movies, I didn't watch any of the other sequels. I don't feel like I really had a reason to. And all I'm going to say is that these 2 movies, well, I respect what goes into the filmmaking here, because the fact that they make a movie on this level of a budget and have it be the success story that it is, I always give credit to success where it is due. But just as far as the actual story and the actual movie itself goes, a little bit of a different opinion. So again, I will end it by saying that I was looking forward to this rewatch for totally different reasons than I feel like everyone else was.
Yeah, probably mostly just to mess with Joe.
Yeah, but, that too. But that's me on every watch along with Joe.
Yeah, that's true. So with that being said, guys, like I said in the chat before we started this thing, we're starting the movie no later than like 15 minutes in.
Yep.
Preferably 10. We are now 25 minutes in, but I think that was needed. I think that was a good setup.
We needed that.
It's okay to break form if it's for good reasons, I would say. So with that being said, if you guys are at home watching along with us, and we know you are, we're going to do a quick countdown. I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, go when we're going to go.
I'm just going over here so I can actually hit the play button on my device.
Yeah, you do your thing,
I'm struggling
man.
with my wires. I have the
mobile
cheapest
movie
setup ever.
watching. So, Dom,
Hey,
are you
Grandpa.
ready at your station?
I am ready. I'm leaning over. Yes, I am ready.
All right. So remember, 3, 2, 1, go. Here we go, guys. We're about to watch Saw. In 3, 2, 1, go. Boom.
Oh shit! I think I paused it. There we go.
Dude, if you watch my Candyman,
You
just
had one
me
job.
on the Candyman watch along, like, come on. I love this already. Twisted Pictures. That's an amazing production house name. That needs more production houses need crazy names like that.
Shit, I'm on Lionsgate Films, so I think I screwed that up. Yeah. All
Might
right, I'm
just
gonna
have to. It's the
pump
logo.
up a little.
It's
Yeah,
the
there's
logo.
Twisted Pictures. Okay.
All right, there we go. Now we get the light going over. Oh boy, is he drowning?
It's all right if you're.
Is he
a few
drowned?
seconds behind.
Saw. Again, shout out again. Carrie Elwes is in this movie too. It's a thing that I feel like not enough people talk about. Carrie Elwes, he's an interesting talent. Oh, sorry, I just realized that was Lee Winnell. And now we have to listen to his American accent, which, as far as bad American accents go, it's funny. I feel like that's one of those underrated treasures in film that is not talked about enough.
I mean, if we're going to go on a divergent there, Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange has one of the worst American accents.
Yeah.
I mean,
It
for
irks
me,
yeah.
nothing will ever top the brilliance of James McAvoy's breakout American performance in Wanted. Oh my God. That movie, besides generating one of my absolute favorite Spill.com reviews ever back in the day, that accent is so bad. But yeah, so we had Lee Winnell. He was just crawling out of the tub. He doesn't know where he is. He's crying out. He's like, "Oh God, what's going on? Where am I?"
I got
You guys are better than me because anytime I hear these accents and I don't realize that they're from another country or whatnot, I can never tell ever. I'll watch some of these movies and I think their accents are just fine, and I don't even think they have an accent. I think that's just how they talk. And then I hear them on an interview, and it's like, huh?
Yeah. Dude,
It's
totally,
never until
man.
someone
I
tells
bet
me
it is.
that it's bad,
Yeah.
and then I'm just like, "Oh, it's bad," because I'm a sheep. But it's just like they'll say like Benedict Cumberbatch is bad. And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I guess it is." Like,
So I'm
Yeah.
sure we all watch the Jeremy Johns of the world and stuff, and I've been getting into him a little bit lately, and like he'll always sometimes he'll comment on someone's accent being terrible, and I'm like, dude, there's no way that you picked up on it. It was totally fine. Literally everyone else in the world wouldn't have noticed it if you didn't say it to your million followers. I just wonder if they pull it out of thin air, man. Who's got time for all that? Is I guess what I'm trying to say. There's
It's-
work and there's life. I'm not picking up on accents while I'm watching the movie. I'm focusing on other aspects of the film.
It's tricky because, again, the problem with a guy like John specifically is that you can't compare, because this is a guy who literally his entire career is watching movies and reviewing.
No, I
them.
know. That's
So
part of the
obviously
joke I'm making about
the
it.
lens that you take there is not a good comparison. But the one
Right.
thing I will say, it does make a difference with people who are in our world and the more casual moviegoers who don't pay attention to the behind the scenes and don't pay attention to every actor and don't look at like I said, back in the day, I was legitimately shocked when I found out that the Spider-Man at the time, that being Andrew Garfield, was British, because I didn't think about that. But again, it's one of those things where as I watch more movies as time goes on, and I start to listen for these things because I'm aware of them, and I start to pick up, okay, now I know this is a British actor that is doing this type of an accent because this is better at covering up the American accent. It's different intonations and dialects and just a whole lot of other stuff that frankly doesn't have too much to do with the actual movie watching experience. It's just more so stuff that I take from my own life. But again, it's little things that you pick up on over time as you watch more movies. And it's just, again, one of many more infinite things that help contribute to the movie watching experience overall. And I'm sorry, but literally, I love Lee Winnell's overacting. Again, Chris and I, we've just been getting into the Rewatchables podcast. They have this moment. There are many awards. They have an award for the They Knew award for best overacting, and Lee Winnell within the opening scene of this movie. We're not even 10 minutes in, and he's already winning it. He's already winning it.
I want to make a point about this franchise too, because I know most of you guys haven't seen more than 2 or 3 of them, right? This is 8 films, and it's important when watching these, especially the early ones, little details to pay attention to, because in the 4th episode, the 5th, 6th, as we go along, the attention to detail within the continuity of this franchise might be better than any other film franchise I've ever seen. Little things that you pick up on that are in 1 and 2 and 3 show up 5 movies down the line. And it could be something, like I said, small or something larger. It could be an object, or it could be an actor returning just for 3 seconds. So the fact that these filmmakers were able to put this together, I mean, when they made this movie, they didn't think they were going to have 8 movies. They thought it was just 1 movie. And then you go to 2 and 3, and then I believe once they got to 4, they kind of had an arc of 3 or 4 more movies to tie things in. But the fact that they can take, especially these few standalone movies in the beginning, and find a way to continuously weave them all together is really impressive. And I don't think it gets enough credit.
Yeah, it's an interesting take, especially considering that obviously Saw has become like, again, another one of those franchises that's kind of fallen victim to the criticism of just churning out sequels for sequels' sake. But and even though I haven't seen a majority of them, I did hear that like each and every Saw movie, for lack of a better word, was trying something. Like, I know there was obviously the whole thing, and again, we won't spoil this for anybody who hasn't seen it, but the one thing I will say, and again, why I think a lot of people give these first couple movies a lot more credit than some of the later entries, is these first couple movies are actually trying to say something. They are trying to say something about kind of like just the state of what somebody when they get sick is in, the state of just the medical industry in this country, you know, without spoiling anything, how that affects the plot. But I know for a fact that that's also something that later movies do get into, which again, for a schlocky horror movie that has basically been completely kind of devolved into torture porn, it's pretty interesting how you still get those moments in little pieces here and there. So yeah, it's a good point to bring up.
Chris Snyder in the chat saying the Saw franchise is like a soap opera, and that's probably the aspect of the franchise he enjoys the most about it. I bring that up because I feel like, Robbie, I haven't seen all the films, but is that kind of the tune you're sort of speaking to in regards to the depth of this franchise, you know, being more than meets the eye?
When people think of Saw, the term torture porn gets thrown out like instantly. So it's really it's a popular term really within the film community to use, and I push back against that because this franchise is rooted in the story and the intertangling of all these characters, how they find themselves mixing in with each other. I don't like the term torture porn. I think it's overused. I don't even know what it means. Horror movies have torture in them almost all the time, all of these films for decades. I don't know why in the early to mid 2000s that was something that was used ad nauseum. I don't like it. I don't use it. Another one, Hostel, was another one that
yeah, Hostel is a big one, and also it's the Eli Roth movie, so I know I think the term, if I remember correctly, it came from the idea of just taking the level of torture that would exist in these types of movies for the story and just taking it to a level where it's just like, okay, you just seem to be just enjoying this just for the sake of enjoying this, you know?
Well, and that's why I push back against it, because, you know, if you're making a film and it has kind of gratuitous kills and violence for the sake of it, then I understand. But that's not this film. I don't even think that's Hostel, really.
Right.
There's so much more in this franchise, and these kills and these traps, which, you know, that's the sexy, right? That's the sexy part about it, and that people like to talk about. But having just rewatched the entire franchise and doing a binge over probably a 4 or 5 day period, I just kind of kept going with it. There's really so much more that you can get deeper with these films. And it's not just the first 3, because I'm a big fan of, part 6 is right there too. These arcs that you get, you know, and you really have to follow it and almost think of it as a mini series, just kind of an extended cinematic mini series, because they really all intertwine. And, you know, you can't just jump to part 6 and I'm just going to watch Saw 6 today, or I'm going to watch part Saw 4. You can't do that. You have to watch 1 and then really pay attention and kind of go along with it to get the full experience, in my opinion.
So, Robbie, I'm going to jump in here and just talk about this, because I did mention, we talked about this offline, about the torture porn situation and how you rejected that. And I want to sort of clear the air. And I'm going to clear the air first by mentioning that, I haven't seen any of the Saws, and I've seen a couple of the Hostels. So I sort of know like a couple of things. And this is what I saw track and how it happened. I don't necessarily think that Saw is torture porn. Basically, what I'm seeing right now already, this is like done so simply that this is not what I think is the phrase of torture porn. Yeah. I think that this did give birth to, like, these two people are being tortured. That is just, that's a fact. But this is not torture porn, because the entire movie is not centered around a creative way to torture people. And the entire plot is not centered around a creative way to torture people. By the way, once again, have not seen the other Saws, so I cannot say that any of those are like that. So I'm not even criticizing those. But I know that, like, after seeing Hostel, I was like, okay, this is just a creative way to torture people. And that's where, like, Hostel 2 even got into. And the fact that I saw those before I even got into horror movies is just friggin' beyond me. But I think I was trying to impress a girl, which didn't work out,
Aren't we all?
obviously.
It happens.
It's a big part, yeah.
Usually it doesn't work out. It's really funny how that works out.
But it's
That's the
interesting
first
to just
time I've
look
heard
at this
that.
as like, this might have been the birth of the torture porn without this being torture porn. And you're right, this is an incredibly overused thing where like someone gets murdered in a horror movie and they just go like, torture porn. It's like, no, that's just violence, dude. Like, that's not how this goes. So I look at something like this as like, well, this was a torture movie. Then there were a billion other torture movies after this. And that is like what released that kind of thing. So that's what I think might be the reasoning behind them constantly saying that in the culture.
I think the term is also used a lot by people who don't understand it. Like,
so most people on the internet. Again, it's probably one of those clickbaity terms that Screen Junkies threw in one of their honest trailers, and now everyone on the internet uses it.
I've definitely used the term before for, I don't know if you guys have seen Goodnight Mommy at all.
Yeah,
I've heard of it.
Yeah, like I personally wasn't a fan of the movie because I was so disgusted by the torture in it. So I used torture porn as like a way for me to be like, nobody should watch this. It's torture porn. But as I've watched more horror movies, I understand it a bit more. Still don't recommend Goodnight Mommy though.
Yeah.
So let me ask you guys this then, as someone who's more of like the TV side of things, is Saw the first film that's credited with the torture porn moniker? Is this where it stems from? Is that why you guys brought it up, or is it just like, did it help popularize that internet slang?
In the mid 2000s, that term kind of got thrown around, and Saw was the film that it kind of popped off. I mean, people don't realize how big of a success this movie was. I mean, this movie was made for just a hair over $1 million, and I think its box office return was over $100 million.
Yeah, it was.
That's an incredible return. I mean, usually you have to make 2 to 3 times your budget to be considered kind of where you're making a profit, and that's an insane turnaround. And there's a reason why the first 7 films were released literally year after year after year. There wasn't a gap until we got from 7 to 8. So it was an incredible thing. And, a lot of people criticize horror films for pumping out 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sequels. And I tell people, there's a reason for that. It's because they cost 5 and 10 million to make, and their return is 60, 70, 80 million. If you're in charge of a studio and you see that return, and you don't greenlight more movies, you should be fired immediately because you're doing a terrible job.
Yeah. A lot of people like to still believe like movie making is still an art form, but they don't realize how commercial Hollywood is. And for a good reason. Like, it's a business. If you make something good and people like it, you're going to make more. It's a fact.
Yeah, it's a common misnomer that I've had to explain to a lot of people. It's funny, I've actually been reading a couple of screenwriting books. They've literally said it's the whole reason why so many people have a hard time getting their movies made is it's because it's like Hollywood. The biggest misunderstanding that people have about Hollywood is that Hollywood is not in the business of making movies. Hollywood is in the business of selling movies. And there's a very, very big difference between those two things. And it's a thing that a lot of people, specifically on the internet, still don't seem to grasp. But it's like, people, this is why we get the stuff that we get. But just bringing it back to this film for a little bit. Again,
I love the basic cinephiles right now reacting to sticking his hand in there. I mean, oh my God, dude.
Oh my God.
All of their reactions have just been totally visual right now. It's been great.
Yeah.
Well, how would you all react to this?
Well, see, it's funny because
if you wake up and you're one of these two people, where would you go?
Well, my whole thing that I was going to say about it is that specifically from the first time that I watched it, the thing that really impressed me is the fact that I'm like, okay, this is, at least for the first couple of minutes, this is not a horror movie. Like, there's no torture or anything. Again, it's just 2 guys trapped in a room and they're trying to like figure out, they're like piecing together the clues all around. It's almost like a short film that ends up leading into this longer film. Actually, what's it called? Robbie, you'd probably know more about this than me, but I don't remember if this was based on a short that Lee and James did first, and then they ended up doing it into a movie. Yeah. I think it was, but I don't remember specifically off the top of my head. And again, the one thing that I will say is that even though, again, I personally wasn't the biggest fan of this movie, I do think that the story itself and like how it's and the framing devices that they use and the setups and the little it is legitimately a great story. It's a great story. It's a rock solid screenplay. I definitely think this deserves screenwriting credit. Again, just taking aside all of the all the budget stuff that went into it. and what Lee and James were able to pull off. Like, again, that is where I give this movie a lot of credit. But just as far as the storytelling itself goes, yeah, it's really, really well done. And just, at least for the purposes of this movie, again, I can only speak to the first two because those are the only two that I've seen. But at least for these first two, like, everything that you see in this movie does factor into the story, and it factors into all of these characters and their lives. It's just basic screenwriting.
Yeah, there's no drop off. There's nothing that happens in the movie that isn't important or necessary down the line. Yeah, you don't finish watching, this franchise or this movie and say, well, what about that? Why did they do this? You go, oh, that happened because this happened later.
Yeah.
And a lot of movies have those type of plot holes in them, and it's nice to see a film that kind of utilizes everything. It makes it important.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, Robbie, to answer your question about what we would do in this situation,
Yes.
I don't know about you guys, I am very claustrophobic. So if I were to wake up in a situation where I'm chained, I wouldn't even try to get out. I would just accept my fate. And
oh man,
yeah,
pushed over.
Yeah, I'd be looking for a way out in a different way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the whole way to
Immediately, though, you wouldn't at least try.
I mean, we have until 6
I'd
o'clock.
pull at the chain for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh boy, and here we get to it. The detectives investigating Jigsaw's murderers. We got an introduction, Chris, your boy, Miles, Ken Leung, and the man himself, Danny Glover. That's another thing. And Rob, you'll probably know way more about this than we do. How I read the story and I forgot it. How is it that James? I mean, I get there's a couple, a lot of lesser known actors in this movie. Lee obviously himself started it. They got Carrie Elwes, who again was at the time still not like the hot stuff that he was back in the 80s. They get Ken Leung, who at the time it would not join Lost for another 3 years. They got Michael Emerson, who wouldn't join Lost for another year. Again, I still find that really coincidental how they got two people who went on to be two of the biggest stars on that show in this movie. But Danny Glover, that's an interesting one. Like, are you familiar with the backstory of like how he went around getting him? Like, was it the fact of Glover obviously still was like a little bit lower on in his career? Like, do you know the behind the scenes of it?
I think at this point he had already peaked in his popularity, and a lot of times, at that point in his career, I'm assuming that he's probably well off financially. So it could have been one of those situations where he liked the script. It's a chance to do something a little different. For $1 million, this is kind of like an indie film, right?
Right.
So you get that chance to kind of spread your wings and just have a little fun. I'm sure he had no idea, just like everybody else, that this was gonna blow up in the way that it did.
Yeah.
But good for him. He adds credibility to it, and his acting is needed to balance out the performances of our two leads. And as much as I kind of praise the film, it's not number one on my ranking because that acting performance by the two leads in this, it's rough at times, but we can forgive it.
Yeah.
It's a
At
horror
times,
film.
yeah. And now we're getting into their investigation. So Carrie Elwes is telling the story of how the two detectives found the body. And again, this is where I give this movie props. The way that it lays all of these different webs and then weaves them all together. It's very, very engaging. Again, it's a thing that Rian Johnson constantly tries to do in every one of his movies, and in my opinion, fails more times than not. I think he's only succeeded at it once. So, yeah. This is as far as the Johnson shade goes. Yeah, and this is the first of many, as you guys are going to see, of Jigsaw's traps and his ways of entrapping his victims and kind of setting up these very elaborate...
This is one of my favorite in the franchise.
Yeah,
the idea of it.
Yeah, and it's funny because this is also using kind of like that early 2000s, like really quick cut editing style that would become like way overdone and way completely misused in later movies. But again, for these couple movies that it was in for these early 2000s, it was definitely a style, and for a few of them, especially in this movie, it worked. It definitely worked.
Chris Snyder in the chat says Jigsaw likes to book himself a front row seat to his own sick little games. That is so true.
I was actually going to bring that up about the fast editing. It's always fun to go back and see movies after like 10 years have passed just to see like how much in the era they belong.
Dude.
Like if you saw a movie doing those fast cuts now, it would seem so like they're trying to be from the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah.
You could just tell by the color grade that
Yeah.
this
Yeah,
is a
the green.
2000
Like the green over
The
everything.
Matrix green. Yeah.
Doesn't
It looks like
give
a
such
scene
dirty
from
feel, though?
CSI.
Literally, it really does.
Yeah,
I'm just waiting.
exactly.
I'm waiting for David Caruso to show up, say his shitty one-liner, and put on his sunglasses, and then for the song to start playing.
Well, I guess he's green with envy.
Let's do it. We got it.
And cue the
Oh my
Who.
Nailed it.
There's your other boy sneaking in. There he is. Ben Linus, your guy.
It's my guy.
I'm like shouting out Chris whenever I get a chance.
Just so you guys know, my favorite anti-hero, I still say villain, because the season where he really is the Ben that I know and fear is season 2, is Benjamin Linus, aka Michael Emerson's character in Lost. So I got a little bit of a soft spot for
See, it's interesting.
Michael Emerson to say.
I always thought it was season 3, not season 2. But then again, if I had to think about it, yeah, season 2 probably is the one where he's the most menacing because he's the most mysterious because you don't know anything about him. So
he's locked in that little closet. and
yeah,
the
dude.
hatch.
No, that's what I will say. That
Man.
all of his scenes in that season are probably his best.
We're the good guys, Michael. Like it's just like the worst.
yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly.
Ugh. Well, I was wondering. I was just sort of going through it, and I was trying to wonder if I woke up in a basement chained, and Carrie Ellis was across from me. I would probably before I would be a little bit concerned, but I would first ask him about what was Princess Bride like. Did you guys know that movie, the hit it was?
Knew you were gonna do that.
What about Liar Liar? Is Jim Carrey actually that crazy? Like, what's going on there?
Well, I think everyone knows that Jim Carrey is that crazy. That's not something you need to ask.
He really
Carrey
is.
Elwes
Yeah,
about.
he really is.
Ooh, Chris Snyder chipping
Fun
in
fact.
with fun fact about the quick editing. Kevin Gruder did that to fill up more time because they didn't have enough footage from the scene. Little did they know. Again, that's another thing just about the filmmaking process that nobody talks about, I feel like, which is that, guys, I hate to say it, but a lot of the reasons why our favorite movies are our favorite movies is because they worked on 90% luck. It is just luck of the draw. Like, you look at, I'm serious. I've told this to Chris numerous times. Time and place and luck are so crucial.
Happy
so
accident, too.
crucial.
I mean, my favorite movie ever is Jaws. And one of the
There you
reasons
go.
why that's
One of the most problematic behind the scenes stories ever in film
but it
history.
worked.
Again,
Now, if they showed the shark more, would it still be a fantastic film? Sure, but it
wouldn't be Jaws.
It wouldn't be Jaws. that's
Exactly,
right.
bro.
It's just a happy accident. that
Yeah,
it worked out that way.
same thing for me with Godfather. Godfather's my favorite movie of all time. In my opinion, it is the greatest film ever made. And that movie could not have had like a bigger production, more production issues. Again, just the fact that Francis Ford Coppola almost didn't get the job. They only wanted him because, because he was Italian American, and every other director passed on it. Mario Puzo was a severe gambler. That's why they couldn't get that script into production for a while. There were problems securing certain of the actors, so many different casting what ifs. There's actually this really, really fascinating story with the editor where the editor tried to say that Coppola wasn't, that the shots that Coppola was getting it wasn't possible for them to edit them together properly, but it turned out that he was just, that when they sat down and actually put them together, they actually could. They was just saying that so that they could potentially get ahead and try and get Coppola. There's so many different things that happened behind the scenes of just that one movie. And there's a story like that for every single one of these movies, and it just makes the world of film so much more fascinating.
Well, I definitely agree with that.
Now we get this woman getting interviewed by the police. Again, it's been a while. Somebody remind me who this woman is.
Her name is Amanda. You'll see her.
Oh, this is okay. Got it.
If you go into future films, you'll
Got it.
see.
Oh
she
yeah.
was,
Okay, I remember.
She
now.
was the whole point of her going. The whole thing with Jigsaw, for people who don't know, is he takes people who have done some bad things in their life, and he thinks that they take life for granted, and they put them into a situation where they have to kind of break these codes and play a game, so to speak, in the hopes that they will survive and then appreciate their life. For Amanda, she was a drug addict, and a really bad one. And by her, as you can see, surviving the trap, the hope was that she'll realize that her life is precious and that she won't go back into a life of bad decisions or unfortunately being, addicted to drugs and whatnot.
What a
Yeah.
way to help someone.
Yeah, right. No,
Yeah.
but well, again, it's funny.
We never
that
said
because
that
again,
Jigsaw
that's
was
his fatal flaw.
compassionate.
But if anything, I'm really glad that you brought that up because to me, that is actually, it's funny because again, anyone who knows me knows that I've complained ad nauseum about the slasher in slasher movies. I think they're most of the time, at least, most of the time, they're the least interesting character. They're always just there to like act as like this slow moving mass to just like somehow inexplicably magically kill all the people with no personality, just an interesting backstory, but like no actual personable qualities or traits of their own, or they're just a punching bag for the audience. Case in point with Scream. And the thing that I really liked about Jigsaw is Jigsaw, just from the slasher standpoint, is one of the few slashers that not only has personality and purpose for his tricks, but he's got a super interesting motive. I'm not going to spoil that here because, again, it really built into the crux and to me what it is that makes this first film so memorable. And in addition to being, I think, just, again, a really well thought out story as far as that goes. But again, it's just, I find that it's something that really you don't see because, again, it's the things that I go back to with Michael Myers and Jason. Yeah, you know where they came from. Yeah, you know, what's it called? Oh my God, just the setup for this is just so amazing with how it works.
I always get Doom vibes here.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah,
why.
well, again, because this movie came out 2 years after Doom. That's why.
You know, you talked about like the quick cutting in these scenes. Like you want to talk about like building the anxiety, and that really helps with it.
Yeah,
watching
it really
in the
does.
theater, you feel like you're on a ride.
Yeah, it really, really does. It's impressive to say the least. But back to my Jigsaw conversation, what I was saying is that, again, the thing about Michael Myers and Jason is that, yeah, you know where they came from. Yeah, you know what made them. But as far as them, like, do they have, like, any purpose other than just, oh, they're literally just slaves to the plots of those movies as far as killing goes? You know, they don't. Freddy, to me, was the only one that had kind of an interesting backstory as far as, like, you know, him actually being, like, a legitimately terrible person before he died. And once he became a spirit, yeah, he's super sarcastic and he's got his one-liners, but is that's all he does, you know? Like, he's just a spirit and he just exists to kill people for shits and giggles, you know? And then with the Scream, with Ghostface, don't even get me started on that. Ghostface is a little bit different because that's more of a statement than an actual like character than an actual like character with motivation. That's more of a statement on just like the slasher genre in general. But again, Jigsaw, I really, the thing that really sets him apart is the fact that he is a character with motivation, and his motivation again has a ripple effect throughout each and every one of these movies.
Yes. I'll double down on, because you talk about, like, you know, slashers just being kind of one note, I guess was kind of the point on that. A few days ago, I put on my Instagram a breakdown. I kind of did an analysis of what I think they're of the three types of horror fans. So you have what I call like stick figure horror fans who just watch it purely for the entertainment. There's nothing more there. So it's just slashers, maybe mindless kind of zombie films or things like that. And then you have what I like to call kind of the social political horror fan, which is where I feel like I kind of fall. So movies like Texas Chainsaw, Last House on the Left, George Romero's Living Dead trilogy. These are films that you can watch and on the surface just enjoy as films from beginning to end, and you have good character arcs. But beneath the surface, there's a lot to talk about as far as whether it's racial injustice or consumerism and things like that. Then you have what's becoming really popular these days. I call it abstract horror fans. Films like Midsummer, The Lighthouse, The Witch. These are movies that they put character and plot on the back burner, and they try to represent what the director and the writer are delivering just through visuals and in directing style. No one style I think is better than the other. It just comes down to personal preference, just like any other piece of art. But there are some films that cross over. So you could watch a movie like Saw and say, well, it's just, you know, it's just a straightforward horror movie. It's got some gore in it, whatever. But, you know, looking beneath the surface, there's more to discuss. Character motives and what they're trying to give to us as an audience. And I think that's an interesting thing to bring up.
Dude, that's a great point right there.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah,
great,
dude, how
oh
do
my
you
God.
follow that.
That's awesome. Holy shit. I mean,
I was talking on Facebook and I just wrote a comment, and that comment went from 1 paragraph to 2 to 3 to 4.
it's funny how that goes.
And then I said, you know what? This is just, I got out the notepad and just went out.
Yeah, but it's funny that you bring that up because it's true. It's absolutely true. It's kind of the idea that horror. It's funny because horror is one of, again, many genres that, again, we talk about the Oscars, which, oh my God, don't even get me started on them and the amount of times that they've screwed up just with the fact that they ignore pretty much all genre filmmaking in general, which is just a crime to me against filmmaking in general. It's the idea that horror has kind of always been kind of, I guess for lack of a better word, looked down upon as kind of, again, it's just the thing. It's just like, oh, it's just all those lowbrow movies. When again, very similar to sci-fi movies, very similar to, again, certain any other genre. To me, genre storytelling, kind of this more abstract, out there way of filmmaking is, to me, the best way to sell a theme and sell a message. And again, that depends on all your different types of movies. But I really like the idea of the abstract, and then just the what was the second term that you said? With the Night of
figure.
Yeah, it's more like the social political horror.
Right, the social political aspect. Again, it's, if anything, I see that as, again, that's literally something we were talking about in film school, where it started as like kind of, back in the day with, even going back to the Universal monster movies. Those were all making statements without people even realizing, your Draculas, which was a statement on the rich, and Frankenstein with its statements on kind of mob mentality, and the Wolfman with the idea of, doing the Hulk before the Hulk was even a thing, with the duality of man and all that. It's the like going back to the origins of cinema itself. Horror movies have always been about something to me, and then you get into
look at Night of the Living Dead.
Exactly, Night of the Living Dead. And to me, I think the better commentary one is Dawn of the Dead. Night of the Living Dead, I think, deserves props for obviously introducing and making the zombie genre mainstream. But I think Dawn of the Dead is the one that really does a good job as far as the consumerism's discussion that it brings up.
But without sort of getting into like too specifics, although I do agree with what you're saying, Dom, I feel like this was kind of the impetus of why we wanted to do Shocktober in general, because we've been talking a lot on this show, and as we grow doing this show and become, more knowledgeable film watchers, film commentators, whatever you want to call it, right? You kind of like can't ignore the fact that horror really has stepped up to the plate in recent years. And that's like a big reason why I think, aside from just, my personal connection to horror, like I said, living with my roommate and all that, and just being, having good memories with friends. I mean, the genre kind of has me watching it because it's, I think, one of the most interesting genres out there right now. And in the way all the creators are pushing the envelope, kind of like I haven't seen in a while from especially blockbusters. I mean, you want to talk about the Marvel formula as like a contrast there, give me something new. And I feel like horror is giving me something new. So
and again,
celebrated.
That factors into, again, exactly kind of what it is that we've been discussing just with horror. It's the idea that now, the other thing to add into that too is just overall accessibility now, where the amount of accessibility and the amount of availability that there is in order to kind of get across all these different types of abstract horror that frankly just wasn't there before. Again, like you look at something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Halloween, again, as much as I like to dog on those movies just because of who I am as a person and because of my personal relationship with horror, again, I'm never going to discount those movies because those movies of A, were a product of their time, but also B, again, still had a lot of stuff to say. And the fact that they were just made in general and were able to get away with the stuff that they did in a time of, for the most part, still such harsh censorship is amazing to me. And now the fact that you get all these different creators who have all these different takes on the horror just genre and the many different subgenres that there are that go into it, who can tell all these different unique types of stories and that have the platform and the availability to do it. If anything, again, Chris, you and I have talked a ton about how streaming seems to be decreasing the overall value of media in general. But if anything, I will say the one thing that I think it has done a great service for is the horror genre.
Yeah, no, I agree with all that, but this scene right here is just
I figured. It's like, this is a good scene.
It's the one I was talking about earlier.
Sending it to the dragon's lair, I believe, is the Campbell's hero's journey method wordplay that I'm going for. I'm not good with remembering specific words for specific moments.
I totally forgot about all this. This is
really good.
To your point earlier, I actually have a theory that once this whole superhero craze dies down, I believe smart horror is kind of going to be the next genre that dominates for the next 5 to 10 years.
That would be nice. Yeah. But remember, this is the one thing to keep in mind, Ankit, just so you know, is that obviously, again, it's really difficult now for us to have any form of long-term memories because of social media. Not that human beings have really ever been that good with long-term memories, but just remember how long the Western genre was a thing. And obviously, again, it's different now because of social media, but the Western genre was around for a full 60 years. You're talking from like roughly 1930 to 19. I'll even go so far as the early 70s. They were still putting out certain Westerns, even though the 60s was really the last like major decade where they were in theaters and profiting. But like that's a full 30, 40 years. And we're approaching what, year 20 now that the superhero craze has been in its thing,
Well, I think, there's a difference between craze and just where the money is. Like, obviously, every time Marvel puts out a movie, they're
Right.
going to make money for it. But
Obviously.
I
but
think,
no, but that is to your point. That's the thing, because the whole reason why the Western went for so long was because for the longest time, even though again those movies very similar to the superhero movies were putting out kind of the same movie over and over and over again. Those movies, they had the people who went to see it and they made money. You know, so that's kind of like why I'm making the comparison. It's why Spielberg has made the comparison. Why I think Spielberg, I know a lot of people, again, just like the dog on him, you know, the whole boomer argument and everything, but I think Spielberg was right on the money. I don't think he was necessarily right in saying that they were going to die out the way that the Westerns did, because I think the difference is that the superhero genre, I think, is on a much, I'm talking the genre overall, not specifically Marvel. I will still yet to, jury's still out on the future Marvel, but the superhero genre, I think, has done a much better job of adjusting its specific stories, you know, where for the longest time we were only seeing the origin story with superheroes, and now we're getting all these different types of crazy stories that are about like so many different things, you know, like we're getting, you know, we got like we got a Western with Logan, we got like these crass meta comedies with Deadpool, we've gotten multiple meta animated movies, you know, that are still some of my favorite movies, you know, with the Lego superhero movies and with the Spider-Verse movie, you know, and again, even Marvel, I'm hoping now with Disney's new focus on and attention to its Disney Plus service, even now Marvel, if WandaVision is going to be anything like what that trailer looks like, is actually going in kind of these new and bizarre different directions. I hope, again.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah.
The jury's always out on Marvel because, again, they have their fan base and they go with what works because it's Disney and that's what they do. But just as far as what I'm hoping I get.
Well, I mean, within these superhero movies too, it's almost like there's subgenres within them.
Exactly.
You know, for me, my top 3 superhero movies. All right, Dark Knight, Logan, Joker.
Similarities, yeah.
Especially Joker, which is my favorite film of 2018. And there's a lot of good ones.
Yeah, there were. Yeah, there were. And it's funny, I personally wasn't the biggest fan of Joker, but again, very similar to this movie, just because of my own personal taste toward that movie, and also specifically that director and what he was trying to do with that movie, and why I don't necessarily think he was the right person for the job, and just his own personal sensibilities kind of getting in the way of what that movie was trying to accomplish. I do think that the fact that that movie exists, and the fact that that movie was trying to say what it was trying to say, and the fact that that movie was as mature as it was, is what I give that movie credit for. And 2019 also. But yeah, 2019, if you want to talk about just the deconstructive superhero movies, you know, you get a movie like Shazam, which, again, even though that's a DC movie, and that's a whole different discussion right there as far as those goes. Shazam is, to me, that's not a superhero movie. That's just like a family movie. You know, that movie is all about just this kid who came from a broken system, who's just trying to find a family that he's never had. You know, and you look at something like, and this is going to be a real stretch because this movie, frankly, sucked, but Glass, problematic as that movie was. Problematic as that movie was, and how that movie was once again an example of Shyamalan being way too far up his own ass for everyone's good. That movie was, at the very least, it was trying. It was trying to say something. Chris, you just missed it. I literally just got into a discussion about your favorite movie of last year, Glass.
Loved it.
Oh, phenomenal film.
I loved it.
That movie was trying to make a statement about kind of our perception of superheroes. I think the problem is that Shyamalan really had no idea what he was trying to do and what he was trying to say. I think Split worked because Split was, you know, a movie that he made with the intention of making a movie, because he wrote that script at the same time that he wrote Unbreakable, when he thought that Unbreakable was going to end up being a franchise. But yeah, it's just there are just recently, like, we are seeing this, and again, just look at some of the more popular superhero properties that have come out in the last year. You know, The Boys and Watchmen, if we're looking at the TV front, you know, just the shows that are kind of like writing the book as to like where the future of the superhero genre is gonna go. You know, that just even that alone just kind of shows like the different layers and kind of the way that I think that the superhero genre is twisting and remodeling itself in order to continue to survive, in order to continue to tell these stories the kind of the way that the Westerns were not able to do that, you know? So that's why I think that the superhero genre is definitely going to last a little bit longer. But again, going back to horror does not have that problem at all, because if there's one thing that horror has shown.
I'm sorry, I just really hope the superhero genre doesn't last like 40 years. That sounds absolutely awful.
So really, you're telling me, I'm not talking about specifically with our iteration of The Boys, but you're telling me that you would not want to see more deconstructive superhero stuff going forward, or you just don't think it lends itself to longevity the way that it has been?
I think I'll take it if it's the best of the superhero bubble, but I'm just so over the superhero bubble.
See, again, I think that's a big difference with you and me, because again, it's people have this kind of sense of high caliber and this bar that they want to come over. And my whole thing is that I'm like, okay, I want a good story and I want something really interesting. And for the most part, again, I know it's not going to be everything that I get because just based on, oh my God, this scene is that, I'm sorry, that was kind of hilarious. Just with him like under the sheets trying to kidnap. That was kind of unintentionally hilarious.
I think maybe I'm behind. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Always check your closets, man. Always check your
literally always check the closets. Yeah, that was kind of funny. But yeah, so just as far as that goes, again, I look for good stories first and foremost. And again, just the fact that because there is so much content, it's going to be literally impossible for every story to be perfect. So I kind of have to look at it through that bubble. And I think everyone does have to kind of look at it through that lens because look, as long as we continue to do that, we are going to get more good stories. It's just, again, it's on us now. It is on us to go and look for the new stories and understand that we are not going to be spoon-fed everything that is great. And that sucks. And that's terrible. And that's depressing that we have to live in it, but we also have to accept that that's reality.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I obviously enjoy The Boys. I really enjoyed Watchmen last year. And there are some, of the blockbuster films that I thought were good. But for every one that I really enjoyed, there's like 7 that I was like, all right, drag and drop, copy and paste formula and on to the next one. It's just, I feel like horror right now is pushing the envelope so intensely. And sci-fi as well. If you look at like High Life and some of those A24 films, it's just a shame that like what we give our attention to is just not as creatively
yeah, but again, you and I have talked about this. That to me, it doesn't have to. That's a whole different argument. That's the consumerist argument. That's the Hollywood marketing machine argument, and what is easier to market towards the mainstream audience.
For sure, but I mean, I'm not just gonna just because it's the minority opinion doesn't mean I'm not gonna say it.
Right? No, and that's fine. That's fine. It's just we have to understand that again. It's a thing I constantly have to reinforce. We have to understand that we are in a bubble. We are in a bubble. We are not the majority. Frankly, I don't think there ever was a point where we were, and I don't think there's ever going to be a point where we will be. Again, the whole point of movies is that movies are for everyone.
It's true.
Now
we're on
highlight because Rob, during a superhero conversation, because Robert Pattinson.
Yeah.
First of all, that trailer for Batman looks amazing. I probably seen it 30 or 40 times.
Yeah.
He's a great actor, and I cringe every time someone just brings up Twilight.
Because,
yeah.
What about Rover? What about Good Times? Good Times is his best.
Yeah, not the show.
Yeah, yeah. I think he's gonna do well, and as long as no matter what the genre is, if it's quality, if it's entertaining, if it's engaging, that's what matters from a fan perspective.
Absolutely.
There's a phrase I always say on my podcast where, or on Joe and I's podcast, I should say, where it's a dumb phrase, but it's just one that I keep on saying whenever I hear about a movie coming out or whenever I just think about a movie. I'm like, if it's good, it's good. And it's obvious and it's Buddhist and it's it's just a little bit too much, just insanely, nothing there. But it's just something I think about. Where it's like, oh, they're going to make a movie about a slinky. Wait, if it's good, it's good.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one thing. That's where I look at, the superhero boom, and the superhero boom. I mean, I'm a huge Marvel guy. I'm even not a huge DC guy, but I'm a follower of the DC guy stuff as well. I love seeing both of them, but really, it's just when it comes down to it. Yeah, there's going to be good movies there. There's going to be bad movies, just like there's going to be good horror movies and bad horror movies, just like there's going to be good dramas and bad dramas, and. This is more of a nothing statement, really, but that's just one of the things I think about when I look at each part of that. And, there's trends. And we have to remember, here comes math teacher movies in here. Here comes the math teacher. There are trends. And trends do not mean a straight line where every single one is going to be better than the other. There's going to be ones that are lower. There's going to be ones that are better. And it's going to go up and up and up. And it's just going to be a little bit of a scatter plot. And, that's one of the things I think about when, I think about movies. It's the horror movies have been getting much better. It's going to be a few bad ones, too. I don't know if anyone has checked out the 4 Amazon Blumhouse movies, but if you haven't, don't. They are.
Okay. I didn't want to make that joke preemptively because I didn't want to be that guy, but none of those movies looked good at all.
God. I only watched 2, and then Joe told me the other 2 were worse, and I was like, I can't give negative scores, my dude.
Chris, that's so funny that first off, Sean, I'm so sad that I never had a math teacher like you while I was in middle school or high school because I just felt like that just would have made my just my overall general feelings toward that subject way different.
God bless you,
But-
Vince.
But the one thing I will say is, Chris, again, that just goes to Blumhouse specifically and how they kind of seem to be, they are wrecking shop right now, just from a money standpoint. Like, it doesn't matter. They are just putting out something with a Blumhouse. They put like $2 million on it, and they make bank as far as that goes. Jason Blum is crushing it
That's
right now.
very important because they do that. That's their
Yeah.
move. And that has been their move since Get Out.
Yeah.
And you know how they can
long
do
before Get Out, that's what I was actually going to get to. Long before Get Out, they started that shit with Paranormal Activity. Paranormal Activity was what they started that with. They've been
Sure,
like,
that's
you
so
talking
long
about
ago,
that.
but you can't forget about that.
No, you can't, because that is what made them the powerhouse that they are today.
And in Get Out, they made their nut as well. Like they made it
They
again.
also
And
had
they just
they had split Get Out and Happy Death Day all in the same year. That is a win. And it's so funny because, Chris, you and I were literally just talking about this earlier in the year. First, we kicked it off with Fantasy Island. You're like, oh my, and I was listing off some of the Blumhouse titles for you, and you're like, oh my God, why is it seen that like for every one of their movies it's great, there's like 3 more that's shitty? I'm like, you now understand the abusive relationship that every single fan has with Blumhouse, and that's the problem, is because for every piece of shit that they put out, they follow it up with a nugget of gold. Because literally, Chris, you remember, not even 2 weeks after we fucking roasted the shit out of that piece of shit Fantasy Island, whatever the fuck that movie was, we got The Invisible Man, which is still my number 2 favorite movie of the year.
Damn,
And, you know-
dude, why did they do that to us?
The thing with Blumhouse,
they just throw the money against the wall. That's how they're doing it.
And I'm
I can kind of respect it to a degree, but it just
but
sucks
again,
that we're like, we're the pawns that they're just kicking around here. We're their
we're the consumer, and this is always going to be the relationship that we have with these movies. And again, it's the nostalgia critic Jurassic World joke where it's like, I think I'm done with you. Oh, but we have this cool thing. I think I'm falling for your bullshit
I will
all
say,
over again.
this is how you know to do it. Is in the trailer. In the trailer, if it says from the producers of Get Out and The Invisible Man, that means that movie is a stalwart bucket of shit. Like that movie, because they're just like, they just literally throw the words "get out" there. They're like, "Get out,
yeah. They gotta ride those coattails, right?
Oh, and let's not forget that this is also the studio that gave us, weirdly enough, one of the most like kind of sleeper hit franchises ever. Where every time this movie this franchise has a new movie that comes out, you're like, oh wait, that they're still making movies in that franchise? Okay, and that's The Purge, which was the base off of a movie that the first movie was not good, and then it just kind of spawned and actually again turned into like this other like kind of sub franchise that ended up like kind of creating like this really interesting social satire as far as like just human the human mind when it comes to criminality and stuff like that.
Well, once Blumhouse pumped out Halloween and they got the rights to make that, and it cost like $10 or $15 million to make, and they made like over 250, it just became the remake craze again within their studio. And you go back to how they'll come out with a good film like The Invisible Man. Last year, they put out one of the worst movies I've ever seen in the theater, and that's the remake of Black Christmas.
Yeah. Oh man, and Chris, I'm getting memories. I'm getting flashbacks right now.
I gotta make a point on that, because when a film like that comes out and it gets criticism, quickly that criticism is there's a group of people who try to dismiss it as, well, maybe you're sexist or something because it's a film that seems like it's pushing an agenda, which it does terribly, but really horribly. And I say that as somebody on the left. But even if you remove that, it was still a terrible film. And I like bad movies. I'll watch movies that are bad because it's entertaining, but this was just insulting.
Yeah. Was it Girls Get It Done?
For sure, and
I was waiting for somebody to make that joke.
I put a review out for that movie, and I usually just like to stick to reviewing films that I like. I like to bring awareness to films that maybe are not getting enough attention, but I had to just get it out.
Yeah.
That movie lost me when the killer had a crossbow in a house. I mean, come on, that's not gonna work. I don't hunt. I've never held the gun, but even I know that is just not gonna work.
Oh man,
I mean,
Like,
Oh,
holding a
man.
gun like this, and the other one's got a shotgun. You are a police officer. I can't handle it. He's like,
Oh man, you just stumbled onto a classic buddy cop trope where one
do you
always
guys-
goes in with a gun and one always has a shotgun every time, and it's a
Oh my
classic
God.
film trope.
I mean,
1
let's
year
just talk about the
anniversary
greatest
watch
tag
along
film.
or for Christmas. You guys got to come on. We'll host it.
Could we call it Slay Girls? Because that's what they're like, you know.
Oh
their
my
little
God.
tagline was.
Please. Let's
Slay
go. Let's
Girls.
go.
Oh
Let's
yeah,
go.
Saw.
Basic enough for me to say yes.
But no, yeah, Black Christmas, the remake. That movie sucked, and yeah, Chris, I don't know if you ever want to go back and re-listen to our episode from that season. I re-listened to that episode. I still have no idea whether we were actually talking about the movie or we were just kind of just having a fun time with Pat. But we definitely said some stuff about that movie, and none of it was positive. Which, again, I think Pat had the most amount of insightful stuff. And Pat was trying to praise the movie because Pat's a professor.
We went to see this film with the former film professor of ours, and needless to say, he was not impressed.
Yeah, to say the least. Well, and great, again, and this is what we have to say about Pat as a personality, is that Pat, as a person, will always give credit where credit is due. That is the one thing I will say.
Yeah, he's good for that. And
I will say,
you know what? No, you Ankit, please.
Oh no, I was gonna probably change the subject, so it's okay. Go ahead.
Oh well, you know what? The moment's passed, so
Okay, sorry about that.
Change the subject now.
No, it's still kind of tied, but I was gonna say I am looking forward to that Blumhouse remake of Freaky Friday with Vince Vaughn.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, freaky. Yeah, I think that actually looks
It looks
pretty
fun.
funny.
It looks dumb as
Dude,
hell,
that
but
looks
I
really cool.
Yeah, because it's from the director of Happy Death Day, who is actually kind of funny.
We got
it's good. It's just going to be something wonderful because you're putting Vince Vaughn, who, let's just face it, like after this, like, you know, in the same era as Saw, kind of like was the big peak, and then just fell off the map completely. I don't think for any sort of controversial reasons, just kind of like, you know, he tried to do drama, that didn't work, and, you know, so now you're going to have him play like like a serial killer, but in the body of a high school teenager, which sounds like from the trailer, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, I am so ready for that.
Yeah.
I love Vince Vaughn. I think he is criminally underrated, and I can't wait to see that film.
Yeah, so here's my thing with real quick, because we got to get past this scene. It's like, oh boy, it's like shooting the guns. It's like I don't know why, for whatever reason, I was just thinking, oh boy, oh the throat cut, oh the throat cut. That's right, I remember. Oh, I remember my reaction to how long Danny Glover survives, and I'm like, dude, throat cut in the. I'm like, literally to quote Drax, the finger across the throat means death. Like, come on, man. But so I thought that was kind of fun, and then the way that Ken,
Oh damn, that's some Assassin's Creed shit.
Right? Literally. Also, why the fuck didn't he pull down the hood? Like,
he can talk,
gunpoint.
he can breathe, and he handed the gun with one hand. That is multitasking. I'm holding my own throat and passing the gun.
The one thing I will say about that, and again, and I don't know how much this counts because the movie that I'm talking about came out long after this movie, but the movie Lawless in 2012, directed by John Hillcoat, does set the precedent that somebody can survive a throat slit. Now, granted, I'm not saying that it's feasible by any means in real life because, again, that amount of opening and that amount of blood coming out, there's no way in hell somebody survives that.
Oh, The Gift. Sorry, I read that comment.
Oh, yeah, The Gift. That's also great.
That is such a good movie.
Yeah.
My extensive watching of Grey's Anatomy suggests that you can live for a really long time. At least
Yeah, but then again, no offense, but that's also a show that I spoiled for a bunch of people without having watched a single episode of the show. So keep that in mind as far as that goes.
My real issue with Grey's Anatomy, because we should talk about that on the Saw watch along, is that you know, weren't there like 17 main characters that were shot to death in a hospital? Why has that hospital not put a metal detector in there?
Right?
Like, I mean, it's
Wasn't it the same hospital where there was a bomb that went off in it too?
which bomb? That's
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, I love this.
Which ferry crash? Which
Oh my god, I love
plane
Danny Glover, how he's like stumbling down the steps. Dead.
Oh
It's
my
like,
god. Oh, he's still alive. Wow.
Yeah, still, somehow.
Yeah, but he calls the most cast, so they gotta keep him alive a little longer.
You win this night, like already.
Damn, that's a kill.
This is what top billing will get you.
Yeah.
What a great Caroline.
Yeah, right. It's like this is what happens when the movie's marketed under your name. Dead, and cut to black. But yeah,
No. Oh no.
yeah. Wow.
Oh,
that
I really enjoyed
Wow.
it. Switch to black
That
and white
freeze
there.
frame.
did survive the throat cutting.
When you die, you become the crime scene photo. That's how physics works.
Yeah, he,
Poor,
he's different in terms of-
poor Ken Leung. Oh man, Ken Leung just got dirty by every franchise that he was in. He got done dirty by the Saw movies. He got done dirty by the one X-Men movie that he was in. They put him in an X-Men movie. They made him a goddamn human porcupine. Ken Leung is just the king of just getting fucked over by big franchises. It's funny that you mentioned that because my whole thing with Miles is the textbook definition of a character who had a really cool setup, and they totally did him dirty by just making him the sidekick character.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I don't think anyone could disagree with me on that as far as that goes. Like,
well,
Miles,
that's the problem. I mean, you got major network, Asian, can't have that.
Thank you.
Making
my point for me. Making my point for me. Which sucks because again, Miles, like pretty much every other character that's introduced on that show, was an awesome character with a really interesting backstory and a really interesting.
I love that batch of 4 that they introduced him with.
Lapidus, my man.
I thought that those were really good additions that, for the most part, were all pretty,
great characters.
Yeah. But yeah, real quick, bringing it back to Vince Vaughn, because I really liked where you were going with that, and then the whole Danny Glover getting his throat cut and kind of stumbling around kind of hilariously. And that whole thing kind of distracted me. But the one thing that I will say about Vince Vaughn is that my whole thing, again, Vince Vaughn, comedy mastermind, obviously then kind of fell off. What's weird to me is that when Vince Vaughn started to make his comeback, I felt like they were putting him in all of these roles where it felt like either he was miscast or he wasn't really understanding the role properly. Because my whole thing is, again, and I've said this a lot on this, Vince Vaughn is one of a generation of actors in the late 2000s. Again, comedy actors are well known for getting typecasted. But Vince Vaughn specifically, I thought, again, was another one of those guys where Vince Vaughn, you put him in a role, when is he at his best? When he's fast talking, when he's sarcastic, and he was just going nuts. That's when you get peak Vince Vaughn. And the problem was that he was doing all of these movies where they were kind of trying to require him to be subtle. And I'm like, okay, I don't hate that. And sure, I admire you for wanting to flex your acting chops, but just the roles that they were putting him in, they just didn't work. Like, you had him in Hacksaw Ridge, and he stuck out like a sore thumb. And then you had that movie that when he did that stint movie streak with S. Craig Zahler, that Brawl in Cell Block 99, which a lot of people loved, and I just thought that movie was a torturous slog fest. And I was really confused. I'm like, is this the future of Vince Vaughn movies? Like, I don't like this at all. But then I saw him, again, shout out to American High, which is the production company right where I went to school in Syracuse, Oswego area. American High is the production studio that did Big Time Adolescence, and they also did this movie, a little movie that came out on Hulu recently called The Binge. And that movie, The Binge, was not a good movie at all. It was the latest in a string of super bad ripoffs, but Vince Vaughn was the best freaking part about that movie, because that was, I'm like, okay, this is the Vince Vaughn that we've been missing. This is Vince Vaughn. Just that crazy, kind of over-the-top guy who, again, when done right, is kind of a little unstable, but he's also like super charming and super casual. And that looks to be, and now that's what he's doing in this freaky movie, I'm like, okay, this is the Vince Vaughn that we love. Again, it's why I think the biggest missed opportunity ever. And I feel bad for anybody that defends his performance is his performance in True Detective Season 2. That whole season in general is just a flat freaking mess as far as that goes. But I think that certain of the performances are really good. I think Colin Farrell's really good. I think Rachel McAdams is really good. I think Taylor Kitsch, that was the beginning of his micro comeback. Vince Vaughn, though, oh my God, he sticks out like a sore thumb. He is trying so hard to play that as serious as humanly possible. And I'm like, no, dude, if anything, this type of role calls for you to be like kind of crazy and over the top, And he's just playing it so
you
straight.
Mean like yourself?
Thank you.
Yourself?
Yeah, and he's playing that role so straight and so down to earth and kind of making that role even more unintentionally comedic than it would be if he was actually playing it like crazy and over the top.
I'm wondering why you're relating to Vince Vaughn. I can't see the two of you.
Yeah, right? Kind of
really
no similarity at all. Yeah, pretty crazy
That's
how that goes.
Sarcastic comment.
But he does seem to really want to have those really dramatic moments. And, I just think of something like Into the Wild where that was 2008, I believe, 2007.
2007, yeah.
Yeah. And, that's just one of that's where he started to disappear again because he tried to do the dramatic thing.
I'm pretty sure that was also the same year that he did Fred Claus, which was not doing anybody any favors.
That was the most dramatic.
I get down with Fred Claus. Don't come for Fred Claus. Okay.
I mean, Paul Giamatti as Santa just sounds really great. I could just see him, little kid, going into the living room and it's like, I'm not loving these presents. They're worth billions. It's not a Giamatti like impression I was going for. But yeah, how
love
about Paul
it.
Giamatti and Saw? That would be great.
Right?
Oh,
I've been accidentally
Over
watching
the
Green
door
Book this
in the
whole
back.
time, I think, but it's my bad. Like we'll get there.
Oh boy, yeah, the car seat opening in the back seat, and then he gets accidentally smothered. That was a good joke, by the way.
Thank you.
I love how he's crawling out too. Again, like the visual imagery, it's pretty cool. Oh my god, I love
I
that.
just
he's
want to
wearing
know,
a
like,
Piggy mask.
do you ever find out like how Jigsaw has so much access to commercial properties?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
Merchandising.
As you move along in the franchise, all these questions of how's this guy, how's this guy end up setting all these traps up? How was he able to lure all these people in? Everything. Place.
okay, because I'm like legitimately loving this movie. I'm not gonna lie. Like, the
I'm pretty surprised. It's fucking me. And I hate horror movies usually. Don't hate, but I get too scared. But I'm obsessed with true crime, and this is giving me way more true crime vibes.
Right,
So,
that's the thing.
yeah.
It again, I was making kind of being unfair a little bit before, but this movie doesn't fall. This specific movie at least doesn't fall into the slasher category at all. This is much more so like again, it's a mystery thriller / true crime thing. Like I would much more so consider this something along the lines of like Seven than something like a Friday the 13th or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. It's like I said too. The whole franchise is very smartly written, and everything gets. Most of these questions get answered down the line.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's an interesting arc.
Yeah.
I'm gonna the whole thing and have some really messed up things.
Oh yeah.
Definitely. So now this is an interesting question, and I'd like to pose this just to everyone who we have in our watch list. Obviously, I think anyone who knows me knows I'm a big fan of just the screenplay structure. I'm a huge fan of how things specifically translate from the page to the screen and everything. I took multiple screenwriting classes while I was in college. So an interesting thing that I've noticed recently is trying to figure out who the main protagonist is, because it's funny because with the exception of a few very, very precious few properties, very rarely is an ensemble cast a true ensemble. This is the thing I go back to again. The Ocean's 11 trilogy, while that is an ensemble cast, that is still Danny Ocean's movie. George Clooney is the main character of those movies. So an interesting thing that I like to do is I like to take certain movies and ask who the main character is. Obviously, sometimes it's really obvious, like Shaun of the Dead. It's obviously Simon Pegg as Sean. Again, Iron Man. Again, usually with superhero movies, it's usually really easy, just as those are the go-to example. But with something like this, I want to go around and I want to see all of your guys' opinion. Who do you guys think the main character is? And it's funny because, again, specifically with slashers, everyone always seems to think that the main character is the slasher, when in reality, it's not. Usually, whoever like the final girl is, I think that's the term that's used for the one girl that always survives, like the one the cabin in the woods established. The final girl usually is the one that ends up being the main character because they are the one for who you are following throughout the course of the movie. They are the one who a majority of the tension is happening to. It's usually never the killer. The killer is the marketer, the marketing that the IP that the marketing places the emphasis on that makes you think they're the main character, but they're usually not the main character. They're usually just the antagonist of the franchise, So my question for all of you guys is, who do you think the main character of this movie is so far?
Dr. Gordon.
The obvious answer does seem to be Dr. Gordon.
Yeah.
Because he's the one who's telling the story to Lee Winnell. He's the one who everything seems to be happening towards. He's the one with whom all the context around it seems to be set up. But
I'll cut in on this and just sort of say that I was about to say Dr. Gordon, but when you sort of said, like, he's the one telling the story to Lee Winnell, that's where it's like, okay, so are we the audience for Lee Winnell? And so are we somebody that, like, is just sitting there? We're trying to hide our Australian accent. We're trying to figure out, like, what's, like what is going on in this situation.
Right.
And, are we the ones discovering them? Now, then we get into a whole thing of, like, is the protagonist, there we go, the protagonist the same as the audience surrogate.
Right. And it's funny because, and I'm really glad that you brought that up, because sometimes they are one and the same and other times there aren't. And this is where we get into the co-lead situation, which is, again, another tricky situation. But just as recently, something like The Boys, Chris and I have gone back and forth in depth ad nauseum about how that really is that as many characters as there are on that show and as many characters get focused, it's very easy to see that the main two protagonists of that are Butcher and Huey, because those are the two that a majority of the action has happened to. They're the ones that we're following throughout a majority of it. Again, as far as season 1 goes, it's definitely Huey, because he's the one that the inciting incident happens to, and he's the one that you follow throughout the majority of the show. But what's interesting is how that, specifically with that show, is how that show does a balancing act of, season starts with Huey, ends with Butcher, kind of going on as far as that goes. But that's kind of a really weird example. But as far as that goes, I'm actually really glad, Sean, that you brought that up, because as far as that goes, even though we're following Dr. Gordon, the main character might not actually be him. So I'm really glad that you brought that up.
I kind of want to talk about now. I want to talk about The Boys, and I don't know if I'm going to watch a lot.
Different, I know.
Because I look at this, and I was listening to a great podcast called The Watch. It's on The Ringer. Chris Ryan.
There we go. Somebody else who knows about it. Hell yeah.
I love The Watch.
Oh, The Watch is good. Chris Ryan and Andy Greenwald. Yeah. I've also gotten into the big picture too. Sean Fennessy. Those
two are the tops. Those two are the tops.
Yeah, but no, I'm telling you, the Magic Trilogy, rewatchable, dude. The Magic Trilogy. Bill Simmons, Sean Fennessy, and Chris Ryan. You get those three in a room together. Oh, you're getting some magic in your ears right there.
Totally agree. Now, I would say, recently, and you probably heard this one now, but Chris Ryan interviewed the creator of The Boys.
Yep, it was Andy Greenwald, but I actually listened to that interview. That was a great interview, by the way.
And he just sort of said, all right, so let's think about The Boys, and do you care more about the characters, or do you care more about Vaughn? In these next, he says he can do 2 more seasons.
Right.
3 more seasons, excuse me,
right.
3 more seasons.
Right.
And I just think and I look at it as is the main character Huey? Yes, it is in the first season.
Yes.
Who's the main character now? Maybe Butcher, maybe Huey, maybe Vaughn.
Right.
And I think that
Well, I was going to say that's always the trick with TV, is that because TV is obviously allows for a lot more room for storytelling. That's when you can kind of get these more abstract. You can kind of shift focus from character to character with each season. So TV is a little bit of a weird example, because there's always more episodes, there's always more time, and there's always more difference of focus on other characters. Like I said, the whole thing is we go to Game of Thrones is the obvious go-to. Ned Stark's our main character for that first season. Then after he gets his head chopped off at the end of that first season, then we're following all these different characters and how they factor in. But usually, again, TV is a weird example, but as far as theatrical movies go, just one linear plot from beginning to middle to end, usually it's very rare. It's very, very rare that we get a true ensemble where there is no focal character. Even something like Avengers Infinity War, as ensemble basis that movie still had a central focus character that we were following, on whose journey we were following from beginning to middle to end, whose character choices and decisions influence all the other events and characters in that movie. That, of course, being Thanos. So, again, it's very interesting to talk about this, and it's a constant source of fascination for me as I continue with my movie watching journey.
Yeah.
Well, if we go horror and we talk about a character shift, I'll do one of Psycho. Where,
absolutely. Where the main character of that movie,
first act.
Where the main character of that movie dies within the first 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So that's a great example right there, because for the majority of the movie, Norman Bates is not the main character. I actually don't. I would argue to suffice that
he's not in the movie until 40 minutes in.
Right. Exactly.
You watch the movie and it's Marion Crane, and she's this woman who's, fooling around with a, married man, and she steals money from her job, and she just wants to get away. And next thing you know, they flip the script, and there we get messed up.
And again, that's a credit to Psycho and whoever the screenwriter was for that movie. A credit to their storytelling, where to have your main character get killed off in the first 20 minutes and still have them be the main character. Because the crazy, and again, this is just a brilliance of that movie alone, is that Marion, even after her death, is still driving the tension. Because even though her sister and her sister's boyfriend come in order to kind of take the place of they're still not the main characters. They're just trying to figure out what's going on. They're still just as supporting as we are, And even at the end, when the truth is revealed about Norman is still the antagonist of that story. He is not the protagonist at all. Marion Crane, Janet Leigh, is the credited lead of that movie.
Well, with Psycho too, it's interesting because the novel by Robert Bloch, Norman is described as being older, not attractive, overweight, balding, glasses, And when they switched up the screen, the novel to the screenplay, written by Joseph Stefano, who's a frequent collaborator with Hitchcock, he wanted to present Norman in a much more friendly, kind of innocent way. So when they got Anthony Perkins to do it, I think that was such a key change going from the novel to the film. Because if Norman was played by in the way that he was written in the book, he wouldn't have had that sympathy given to him.
Right. The physical appearance.
Yeah, and it's not just that; it's also the nervousness. He kind of has these tics where he begins to stutter a little bit, especially when he's around Marion. He's not used to being around a woman, and anytime he does, he gets the nervous feel, and it's almost like that's Mother creeping in slowly that kind of throws him off. Because when she first comes in and he has that interaction, he's fine. But once they go back into the parlor and have the sandwiches and some milk and they're talking and whatever, that's when the tension gets in.
Yes.
And then, 10 minutes later, that's the end of her.
Absolutely. That's a good observation. I'm actually glad that you brought that up because I think this ties perfectly into this part of the movie. And now, after having sat through, an hour of getting Cary Elwes' backstory, now we're finally about to get Lee Winnell's backstory and what got him there. So he's a photographer. So he was a private investigator, right? And he was following.
Yeah, Dr. Gordon had been cheating on his wife.
Right.
We kind of glossed over that, but and that's see. I got to point this out that in all of these Saw movies, whether it's this one or the sequels, I think what makes it scary is that the people that are captured and put into these situations could be any of us. One's a cheater, or one's doing drugs, or the other person maybe got into an accident, a hit and run, things like this. We all have done things in our life that we're not proud of. We've all made mistakes, some to a lesser degree, some to a larger degree. Any one of us could be these characters because all of us, none of us are perfect. So these characters are relatable on that level. And that's frightening, I think, when you really look at it and break it down on the surface.
Yeah, I agree.
Perfect and made no mistakes, but
mic drop, dude. I
agree.
Well
done.
Absolutely. But so that's why specifically with that last scene with the revelation of Winnell's character and how that's going to tie into the end, and specifically now how that's going into the Michael Emerson character with Cary Elwes' family and everything. That is why, again, Sean, I think you hit the nail on the head. The Lee Winnell character is our main character of this movie. As far as the crediting, if we were talking about awards or whatever, as far as that goes, just based on, because that factors in screen time too, I think that it would end up being Elwes and Winnell being credited as co-lead. I think the problem is I think Cary Elwes has too much screen time and too much factored into the story itself for him to qualify as just another supporting player. But overall, Lee Winnell is our focus character. He is our protagonist. The movie starts with him and it ends with him.
This is a bit of a sidestep, but it just kind of popped into my head. I feel like this movie and there's got to be other movies from the 2000s. I had a few names, they escape me right now, but I really do feel like this type of writing and this type of intensity in a horror film is really I don't think we would have films like Get Out and be at the point we are with horror where it's taken so seriously if it wasn't for these films, especially this is 2004.
Yep.
I haven't seen many 90s horror films. Candyman was good. The rest are kind of laughable out of what I've seen. So it's just they really stepped it up and got us to a solid place, I would have to say, from films like this,
Yeah, urban legend. I Know What You Did Last Summer much.
Well, you also have to, 90s horror, Silence of the Lambs.
That's true.
That's one of the best ever.
Yeah, one of the best.
What about Misery? Kathy Bates won the Academy Award. That was a fantastic.
Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah, you do have to differentiate between specifically 90s slashers versus 90s overall horror, because there's a lot more than just the slashers that are involved.
I guess Scream kind of popped into my head when I said that, and
that kind of thing. Yeah,
and then
mainstream. Yeah, that changed everything.
No, but Silence of the Lambs.
Publicity to this. If you look at Saw, like you guys have all talked about, budget was low and there was simplicity to that. And so, budget was low, didn't cost that much to make. And so someone made it. And therefore, because someone made it, it got to theaters. We look at Paranormal Activity, same kind of deal. And they did some sort of weird thing where they said demand this in your theaters, which I think was kind of bullshit, but cool marketing campaigns, right on. But Like it was the same kind of deal where it's like we're making this for a low amount of money, like, and we can distribute this and then make a profit. And like you guys were saying, like, it's we care about only Hollywood only cares about making money, which is true. I get it, business, whatever, it's fine. It's what the world is. And if you do a low budget and you get a high amount because you do the low budget, you focus on screenwriters that care about the story more than the effects. They care about the story more than the gore, which even in something like this, they care about the story more than the gore. There's gore, it's there, it's fun, but you care more about the story. And so I think like the emphasis on simplicity that has happened, I mean, and that is something where it's the rise of Blumhouse, where Blumhouse makes great movies. Let's face it. They also make horrific ones, and we already went down that hole. We don't have to go down
seen
again.
Truth or Dare?
Oh,
I saw that in theaters opening night, and man, that's a whole different podcast right there.
But then they'll make the other ones for a low budget, and all of a sudden Blumhouse has $10 billion with them, and so they can just they can churn out anything they want, and that's their business model, which is as from a moral standpoint, it's pretty rough, but from a financial standpoint, they're making the good movies and they're bringing the good movies to us from the horror. And I think and I think Saw kind of started that. Like from what I'm thinking of, low budget, get it out there, and then like several more have done that, and several more studios have said, "Hey, let's get this little guy in there," and then it's also good. And I
feel like kind of if we're going that route, I mean, again, that's kind of, that's talking specifically about modern day commercial trends and everything. I mean, I guess doesn't that also start with Halloween and Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Texas Chainsaw Massacre, somebody would have to fill me in on the specifics of the behind the scenes, but the whole thing about those movies and kind of why they got off the ground, despite their very intense subject matter, is because they were so cheap to make. So the studios figured that they could just cut their losses if the movie didn't make any money as far as appealing to mass markets. And then the movies did make money, and they ended up becoming these tremendous cult classics. But like the whole thing is Halloween, part of the reason why that movie is so like beloved is because it is such a simplistic movie because of how low budget it is. And it is very obvious, but it makes very, very good creative use of said low budget. And so I feel like that is what we saw kind of with all these different and creative horror movies that went throughout the 80s and 90s. I feel like it's the 90s and the 2000s specifically with the introduction of of in-home in-home video viewing, which is something that before what was it? When did VCR tapes started becoming a thing? Was that the 80s or 90s? Someone remind me.
Yeah, 80s.
80s. Yeah. So something that like before the 80s didn't exist. Like if you had to watch it in a theater or you missed it. That was it. So, but now, like just specifically with the 2000s that we're talking, you're talking on-demand viewing. You're talking, you can get it at you can get the DVD. Blockbuster is still very much a thing. You can go out and the access to these movies has kind of changed a lot. So as far as how that goes, as far as the getting the film directly to the consumer, that definitely had a lot to do with kind of the idea of, every other one is kind of good as far as that goes, because they can just churn these things out. They're so cheap to make, and it doesn't matter because it's hard, whether it's good or not, because it's hard. People will watch them.
Yeah, I mean, Texas Chainsaw was made for $100,000.
Exactly.
Halloween, $250. But no one made it. I mean, Halloween made money. Texas Chainsaw, nobody made money on that. A lot of that money was
sound cut it.
questionable means. We talked about like Night of the Living Dead. George Romero and the people that worked on that film, nobody made any money. That movie was never properly copyrighted. So when that movie came out, they didn't even make a buck on it. And that's why now, anytime you see these horror sets, 10 movies in one, 21, you always see Night of the Living Dead plastered right on there because there's no rights to it. It's all in public domain. That's why you have a million
That's super interesting.
remakes. Thankfully, in the years that have followed, Romero was able to copyright the rest of his movies. Okay, but independent horror is really a focus 60s and 70s and into the 80s. Low risk, high reward.
Exactly, and that's kind of like I feel like dictated. Again, it's one of the reasons why the horror genre, in addition to the the horror genre, out of all the other genres, again, it's why it's especially now with COVID, and everything, just crippling the economy and everything. Again, you're gonna see an even bigger flourishment of horror movies, because again, cheap to make, low risk, and even though you can't get them in theaters, you can put them out on digital VOD streaming, and they'll still make their money.
I forget which movie one of you guys mentioned about like the creative marketing too, but I feel like that plays into the indie horror thing. Like, what do you think about the Blair Witch Project?
Definitely.
Oh yeah.
A lot of marketing things. I remember watching that movie like in the grade and the 10th, and like all of us being like, "Wait, is it real? This really happened?" Like we were little, but still, like we all legitimately thought it was a true story, and that's part of why so many people went to the theaters, is because they did such a successful marketing campaign. People really thought it was real. And then you watch the movie, and yeah, it's just like dizzying, like vertigo fest with people running through the forest. But I feel like with a lot of those budget indie movies, it's the whole like industry behind it of why they've been able to make them so successful.
Yeah,
and,
Blair Witch. Is...
I'm a bit of like a gamer, and we actually have like a game show here on the channel, a video game show, and Blair Witch has spawned like a very popular video game from 2 years ago. It's like just the effect that movie's been able to have on the pop culture zeitgeist, just to keep going in different iterations after the film. It all stems from the marketing. Like the video game was a hit, just so you guys know. If you guys aren't video game fans, it definitely had a huge impact. It came out at the right time around Halloween. And so it's just crazy to see how these IPs keep going just for like some viral marketing tactics. Like remember Paranormal Activity back in the day? How that just blew up, point in case, right? I mean,
yeah, and as far as Blair Witch goes, with just that whole scenario, that's just a really fascinating scenario of, again, just timing, just really great timing. Again, the internet is still really just kind of coming around and becoming a thing with like these online chat room forums, and the studio, again, I don't remember who was in charge of marketing over there, but they knew exactly what they were doing. Again, it was part of the script. Part of the script was the fact that these actors were legitimately like they thought they were fooling everyone into thinking that they were real people, and then the marketing department took that and ran with it and used the at the time online tactics in order to make everyone think that, and it was a big part of why that movie is remembered. So that's a really specific example. But as far as just kind of like the beginning of the uses of online marketing and just how just the marketing machine has always been a part of selling movies. You need advertising in order to sell your product, but just as far as like how that is started to like get into people's minds and started to like help them kind of form these opinions about the movies before the movies are even released, as far as that goes, kind of telling them one story and then the movie kind of tells them something completely different. You started to see the beginnings of that form even.
The other one I think of with marketing is, and we go all the way to 2008 with Cloverfield.
Yeah,
and,
that's a big one.
Is one where I just heard J.J. Abrams literally wasn't filming the movie yet and got everyone together to film the trailer, which is fucking insane.
Wait. You're telling me that J.J. Abrams had his name attached to something but wasn't actually involved in the filmmaking? Never heard that before.
Well, no, he was involved in the filmmaking.
I know, I was making a joke, but
no, but that is true. He does that a lot.
And literally, again, I love how everyone credits him with Lost. I'm like, guys, JJ directed the pilot. That was it. That was literally
Bad
it.
Robot. He brought Bad Robot in there.
It was Bad Robot. Yeah, JJ is famous because of the Bad Robot thing. JJ has directed 6 movies in his entire life, and he wrote Regarding Henry. That's like as far as he goes creatively.
Christ, he wrote Regarding Henry.
Yeah.
But I just think of that where like everybody saw that. He didn't put the title of the movie, or excuse me, the movie was not announced. Like there was no title of the movie at that point. It was just the date. And I mean, I think of something like that, and this is 2008 when the internet was like pretty solid. Like this wasn't like Blair Witch where the internet didn't immediately say this is fake. Like this was something where it was just like
you can make a phone call and go on the internet at the same time.
Yeah,
pretty
impressive. Yeah, come a long way since dial-up at that point.
And still people were just like looking at this and looking around. They couldn't find anything. And I think that's the last time that mysterious marketing was used. And I think that's just something that's great with marketing.
Had such an awesome ARG though, with like the Slusho stuff. And like there's this podcast I used to listen to all about Cloverfield called Clover Feels. And they would talk about all these like random Flash games that Bad Robot had made. And you can find all these little tidbits on the internet that were actually in canon in universe. But like, where'd that go in film marketing?
There was was a website where you had 3 pictures and you could just move the pictures around. They were Cloverfield pictures where you could move them around. I remember I did that for a little bit and I was like, oh my God, I'm failing 2 college classes. What am I doing?
Worth it. It's worth it.
Worth it. Yeah, again, that was also before everyone kind of realized that JJ was just the guy who would set up all these mysteries and then never tell you any answers. So that was kind of another thing that would become ruined later on as time went on. But for a time, that was like the coolest shit ever when JJ could literally just drop something, automatic mystery, and everyone would be like, whoa. He got me with Super 8, I'll say that.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Man.
He
Super
struck
8.
gold with that one.
Yeah, he
That
really
was a
did.
really great Spielberg film.
Yeah. Again, that was JJ really saying, okay, I'm the new Spielberg.
Yeah,
was
and then he
like
just
fucking
stopped being a part of the films he got off the ground.
Yep.
Unlike Spielberg.
Until he got involved with Lucasfilm, and then he made like the best Star Wars movie of the new generation, and then he made the worst Star Wars movie of the new generation.
Thank you,
So
sir.
I'm like, all
Thank
right.
you, sir. Very
Yep.
good. Very good. I'm glad you said both those.
That right there tells you everything. I feel like JJ's take on both Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker tells you everything you need to know about him as a creator. Ken, what's up? Coming in. Wait for it, Chris. Wait for it. An hour and what? Hour 12, hour 15 into the movie, like he always does.
I love it, Ken. Thanks for
Continuing the
always
trend.
popping in, man. Let me just say this. Sure, JJ made the best Star Wars film of the new trilogy, and I'm a huge I am forever in debt to JJ Abrams. He got Lost off the ground, single-handedly the greatest television show to ever exist. But was it really that good of a Star Wars film? Gotta ask yourself that question.
Oh boy, sowing the seeds early. Sowing the seeds.
This is okay.
Early.
I think this is okay to
No.
talk.
Well, this is me and Chris sowing the seeds for something that's coming on later on down the line. But Chris is woefully mistaken.
But I do want to know
again,
what Sean has to say.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, like, I know where you're going with this. You're going for it's a duplicate of A New Hope kind of deal.
Which is literally the only argument that people have against
I have
that
eyes
movie.
and a brain, and I can see things.
We're being peaceful. This is Saw. It's a very friendly movie. It's a lovely movie.
My
We're going to be
apologies.
chained in this basement together, and we're going to bring ourselves together with this. I will argue that, yes, that is true. It has hints of it. However, it has some originality to it and some fun things that it brings to it in terms of a new I almost called it A New Hope. So.
Don't give him any more ammo, goddammit. I'm going to
That's
beat this
it.
guy in 2 weeks in a debate on
I'm
this
done.
thing.
I'm done
Don't
defending.
give him
I'm
more
done
ammo.
because I just screwed everything up.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, man. You screwed the
No,
pooch.
please,
You had it,
please.
Sean. You had it. I had you in my corner. I'm like, yes, put this man in his place. And then I was
you're
like,
still there. I'm just a moron. That's all I can say. You're like, I'm still there. I'm still in your corner. You just don't want me there anymore. Trust me. But yeah, we're doing great.
and down goes Elwes for the count.
Shit, I think I'm behind. Oh!
Wow, this editing. I love this. I love the editing of Danny Glover chasing Ben. That's great.
They're racing right now. They're going really fast, and you need to know that.
And also, Chris, I love how you're Damon Lindelof's biggest fan, and yet you still gave JJ credit for creating Lost. It's like, I'm pretty sure Lindelof, weren't you the one that told me that Lindelof got into JJ's exclusive Star Wars club because of the Star Wars shirt he was wearing? And then
That's how he got in A Bad Robot.
Right, in the bad robot. Yeah.
JJ came up with the concept of Lost, and Lindelof was his first guy to work on it with him.
Okay, all right. I wasn't right. Okay.
And then after the pilot, JJ quickly said, "All right, cool, I'm done with this show."
It's
And,
on
they
you.
got Carlton
I'm going
Cuse
to-
involved. And
He's like, I just got a big Mission Impossible movie that I could direct. Tom Cruise elected me to direct this next Mission Impossible movie.
he basically said, "Tom Cruise's cousin, hold my drink. I'm gonna go work with the real,
literally.
the real
He's like,
team."
Ethan Suplee, you good? All right, I'm gonna go work with your cousin.
I actually have to say that, like, when we're looking at this, first of all, two things.
Ethan Suplee.
J.J.
William
Abrams'
Apatow.
Mission Impossible 3 is like absolutely golden.
Oh, that is a
because of-
great Mission Impossible movie.
because of one reason, maybe, or several, but one reason. Philip Seymour Hoffman is the
Hell
greatest
yeah.
Mission Impossible villain.
Hell yeah.
Like, I
Best
mean,
Good
I don't know
villain
if
in
I'm
that
making
whole
hot
thing.
takes there. On the other hand, I'm looking at Damon Lindelof. The man is a treasure for giving us Watchmen. I know he didn't
Yes.
actually give us the official Watchmen, but whew, that's
He gave us
something big.
HBO's
Right there.
Watchmen. Yeah.
The
He gave us
HBO
HBO's Watchmen, and he gave us HBO's The Leftovers. But on the flip side of that, his scripts that he was involved with include Prometheus, World War Z, which is actually not
Yeah.
bad, Star Trek Into Darkness and Tomorrowland. Not the best track record as far as film scripts go. And
Here's the problem: is I stand by Prometheus, but not for the script. So
I stand by Prometheus. I stand by Prometheus too, but for completely different reasons.
Not for any of the writing.
Not for anything. Not for any of the above related like good reasons, like good storytelling or good continuity.
Talk about bad contributions from JJ. Let's talk about his film scores. Oh, those happened.
Are you? Wait a minute.
I can't tell where you're going with this.
Giacchino, man?
I'm just saying he does too much. No. JJ Abrams has scored a film before. I think he only did one, and I remember looking it up when I was studying film composition in school.
Don't do this.
For what movie?
And it was terrible. It was like some random.
I will saw my foot off if I have to.
And so
to get,
I think he just does too much sometimes.
Yeah,
as much as I
runs
love
Bad Robot, and now he's getting his son to make a Spider-Man comic, and I still can't tell if that video was a joke or not.
Oh, that's a bad idea.
Oh boy,
that's nepotism on the worst level.
Yeah, oh yeah. Oh well, well, like I said, Hollywood is 90% nepotism. JJ himself is the subject of nepotism. Both his parents were like producers.
All right, this scene coming up is pretty rough.
Yeah, now we get it. The amputation scene.
Oh, this is it.
He needs to tie that a lot tighter.
Yeah, right. That's movie logic for you.
You need to find something to wedge in between there to twist that up nice and tight.
That's like somebody getting gut shot in a movie in a way that they're not coming back from it. Then somebody's like, "Oh, throw some cobwebs on them; they'll be fine," and then they're fine like 2 seconds later.
I have an expired first aid card, and I can tell you that's not a 10 up.
Yeah, you're like that. That's not how that works.
My excuse though.
You're gonna pass out from the pain.
At this point, like what he's going through, like he's mentally just gone and broken. So I'm gonna give him a pass for not executing that.
Yeah.
Because it's that's the thing too. Like a lot of times, like when we watch these movies, we could be so overly critical. But if you put yourself into the position of these characters, especially at this point, like mentally you're gone. Like look.
Yeah.
At this
Yeah.
Like so at this point. I mean, for me, I probably just would have passed out.
Yeah.
Just been
right. That's what I'm saying.
A half hour, an hour ago.
No.
You know? I wouldn't even have gotten up to this point.
Yeah. At that point, it's just the adrenaline that's getting him going.
No, we were just commenting that like they're still in the same room. Like that's like so genius in the way that they've like filled the rest of the time. The story's super full.
Yeah.
They're still there. Like, yeah, they're crazy.
Very good use of nonlinear storytelling. And there goes Glover. Survived a throat slashing only to get a simple bullet to the chest. Oh, how the mighty do fall.
Oh, I think we're a little behind you.
Spoiler.
Spoiler alert!
People die.
Yeah.
I was about to say, look, he survived a throat slash. Like, I feel like everything else kind of goes out the window.
Now you guys
The makeup's
have
actually
finally
pretty
met
good in
real
this too.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I mean, and for $1 million, that's nothing. Even in the early 2000s, that's
Absolutely.
a drop in the bucket in comparison to what these other movies are working with.
For sure.
No bullets.
I'm living for the fact that this is so true crimey. Like my inner crime enthusiast is just like loving this. And
yeah, so did your mic too, apparently, because it just like interjected like a boast of static right there, and I'm like, oh wow, that was like a cut to in a horror movie right there. What was that?
and Michael
can we
Emerson
reflect on how much of a badass she is?
The mom?
Yeah, the mom just like she got herself out of this situation, and like that was really impressive that the woman didn't just like get killed off immediately.
Yeah,
I'm
right?
like, oh my gosh, a man came and saved me. Thanks.
I'm not on
Well,
IMDb. Is that Monica Potter? I might be off.
Think so. Let me check.
It
But I
really
think
looks
it
like
is.
her.
It is.
Yeah,
Okay,
it is.
Thank you.
It is.
Good. I wasn't if my instincts were totally off. Oh, here we go. He's upset. Only while he was chopping off the foot, if he just said "as you wish."
Right?
I mean, come on.
As he saw, he's like, as
you
wish. Is this when they finally kill Ben?
Look at that.
Hey, there he is.
Oh hell yeah!
That's a good. That's
It's like, fuck yeah. It's like, fuck you and your fucking
what he's doing is so many times you see these horror movies where they get the killer down with one gunshot or one stab, and then they drop the weapon and they leave, and you're like, just no, keep going.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Finish
fuck this,
the
you're like,
job,
fuck this
man.
guy for what he did to
You
us.
had one job.
Just go for it. Like, don't stop until like the whole brain is just ripped to shreds.
It's just like on the
So
floor.
Zombieland, you need to double tap this.
Double
you
tap,
kill him
double
once,
tap
you
it.
kill him twice.
That's the
like-
rule.
Always
Yeah.
do the headshot too.
Exactly.
Then he crawls out. All right, this is where my suspension of disbelief is going out the window because I'm sorry. I don't care how much adrenaline is going through your system. No amount of willpower is going to get you out of crawling like that with that much
Yeah.
blood coming out of your leg on a stump like that. That guy is.
Like, I think he's got a scar, right? I mean, a decent one. Like,
Did he cauterize it?
oh, I don't. I mean,
Because
that's
there's definitely nothing
Did he
hot
have
enough in that
access
room
to-
to cauterize it.
Yeah.
And there's
I
no
think it-
disinfectant or of any kind, so you definitely know that even if he somehow survives, he's dying of whatever infection he gets from that.
I feel like it smarts a little. I mean, it's gotta.
I really need to elevate this, though. I mean,
Really?
he's staying way too upright right now.
I
He's
gotta be
like-
honest.
Right.
The medical realism of Saw is very off. I mean,
What a
Yeah.
lot.
Again, I watch Grey's Anatomy. So I'm
You're used to
really
it.
doctor,
so you're
You're
expecting
used
like
to
three
so-
other people to come in here and shoot someone,
Bring this
like, all
down
the
to
main
reality
characters.
here. Yeah.
Because their contracts were done, and so
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Final reveal time. This was, I will say, again, I knew that this reveal was coming, but this is still my absolute favorite in the whole movie.
I remember the movie theater when
Oh man, I'm kind of jealous. That's the one thing I will say is that knowing that seeing this movie, I would have paid a lot of money to see this in theaters.
oh yeah,
oh, fantastic. This guy.
You should probably spoil it for us.
no, don't do it.
No, I'm not gonna do it this time.
Moves,
I
big
promise,
moves.
like I said, that was the one mistake because I didn't realize I was ahead of you.
Danny Glover is going to show up right now. Oh, no, that's not what it is. Okay.
It was all a dream.
No, not that.
No,
Thank
no,
God,
no, it's
not
not
that.
that. That's ridiculous. It was all on a snow globe.
Yeah, that too.
Better.
Yeah.
We didn't really talk about Jigsaw himself,
And who he really was.
the main actor, Tobin Bell. And
Tobin
that-
Bell.
That voice
Oh, that voice.
is so it's like it's so powerful, and it's because I think he's very monotone. He doesn't have to scream and yell, but he commands the room, and his presence is definitely felt.
There's a power in a guy who, when he's standing over you, is reminding you that he is more powerful than you in every sense without ever having to raise his voice.
It's a very Charles Dance in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Everyone else
very-
shouted, and he just kind of chilled.
To me, I'll tell you that as big and as powerful as he was, to me, the scariest thing about Thanos as a villain is that he never once raised his voice. The only time I think, as far as like when he was talking with the villains, like that was only one time where he raised his voice. I think that was when he yelled at Nebula, and that was only because he's just like, you're annoying, your daughter, who I clearly don't care about. That was the only time, I'm pretty sure, in that whole movie that he raised his voice.
If you see here, so he he gets up here and he tells him that the key that he's been looking for was in the bathroom.
I don't think this movie would have been as popular if it wasn't for the score. Like the
that
original
score,
music.
yeah.
It's so good. It's so memorable.
Here we go.
Yeah, Jigsaw, his real name John Kramer.
Yep, John Kramer.
His doctor was Dr. Gordon. He's dying of cancer.
This is my worst nightmare.
Oh, there it is.
The
Worst
scream.
nightmare.
The scream.
Oh, man.
It's revealed later on down the line that the reason why he's able to last this whole time of thing still, he ends up taking like a sedative that keeps him completely calm. So that was the reason why throughout this entire movie he's just laying there and not moving at all. That's a long time, and you figure like
Yeah, I was about to say he had to time that pretty fucking well too. Like if Michael Emerson doesn't make it in there at the right time, and they don't kill him. You know, it's a little bit, yeah. Now, remind me again. I might have just missed it. They explained obviously in that whole thing how he coerced Michael Emerson into helping him, right?
Yeah, he was orderly.
Okay.
In the hospital, and then the Lee Winnell character was just a private detective who was supposed to creep on Dr. Gordon, who was starting to have an affair, and he wanted to use that against him. So it all kind of
Right. It all intersects. All the pieces matter, to quote one of the best characters from The Wire, Lester Freeman.
Yeah, I love the ending.
Yeah.
It's just game over.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really awesome ending. So is everyone finished? Only because I know it was a couple minutes ahead of you guys. All right,
Yeah.
so now that I can officially say that was Saw.
Wait. Bruce Willis is
good.
looking at his wife. Bruce Willis.
Oh no!
His wife.
Oh no! There was a post-credit scene. Chris told me this wasn't a Marvel movie. God damn it!
Yeah.
Charlie Clouser. Props to him for the music.
Oh,
Really good score.
Yeah, phenomenal.
Really, really good. Okay. I can't believe I'm saying this because I was not expecting it. That was actually a really solid rewatch. And that was a really, really solid movie. Like, I think I'll definitely admit I was probably a little bit too hard on this movie the first time, probably a little bit too high. I was watching it with friends. It was freshman year of college, so there was rarely a day where I was sober during those days. But
it's never gonna go well there. Yeah.
no, not to say the least. Hey, I still had some quality hot takes though from that time period. I will say that. And the one accuracy that I will say is that Bohemian Rhapsody still sucked. But
Yes. Thank you.
So go around the table. Final thoughts, Chris. I guess starting with you. Final
Me?
thoughts.
Yeah, man, I really like this film. I remember liking it the first time I saw it, and I think it certainly holds up. I'm not gonna lie when I say that. I was just super into our conversation, but I've seen this film quite a few times, and so I know what's going on. I don't know why I don't still want to go and watch the second, third, fourth, fifth, so on and so forth, though. I keep asking myself that throughout it. I really enjoy this film. I think it really pushed the envelope. I think that it's kind of set the stage for a lot of films that came afterwards in regards to just the sheer psychological terror that audiences were able to digest and how we've gotten even further past that since. But I still, if I'm being honest, I'm sorry, Robbie, I just don't feel the need to go and watch another. I feel like this is the complete package and I don't need more. So
Yeah,
do with that what you will.
I definitely see how this is interesting just as far as how future developments went. And I did the one thing I will say is I did really like how the plot of Saw 2 played out and just how that kind of factored in and how it did end up factoring into one. Again, it was the best out of a bad situation, which is that once again, this is not a bad situation as far as money goes, but as far as this being a very self-contained story that inevitably was going to get a sequel because of how much money it made. And I definitely think they kind of ran with it. Now that's only me speaking for 2. So now going around the table, you know what? Because I want to bounce around this time. Cinephile sisters, what did you think of your first time viewing of Saw? That's still that. I'm sorry. Please let me know if you don't like it, but I think everyone were kind of running with that name. That's a great name right there.
I like it.
Thank you.
No, I loved it. I thought it was really good. I think that it is a super standalone film. So I can see why you wouldn't want to watch the second, third, fourth, whatever. I'm sure if somebody put it on, I would be sucked in instantly. But I think that speaks to the quality of the movie, is that you don't need a third, fourth, fifth to be oh, now I'm invested in the characters. Now I see why he's killing people. I really liked it. Robbie, I credit you for loving this film franchise, and this is a great movie.
Yeah, I liked it too. I think I had avoided it for a really long time just because I thought it was just going to be a gory slasher film. And I'm someone, I get really physically nauseous when I see a lot of blood on screen. So I'll watch things like Game of Thrones, but I literally have to close my eyes just to not feel sick because that's not fun for me. But with Game of Thrones and things like that, if there's enough of a story there with the blood, I'm still invested and interested. So I feel like that's how I felt about this movie. And I'm kind of the opposite. I do want to see the rest of them. I'm I'm going to rewatch this because I want to watch the rest. True crime fan, slightly obsessed with serial killers. I just want to know more about him. I need to know the backstory. You said it gets explained.
Yeah.
So I will definitely be watching more of it.
I can tell you right now that does get explained. But yeah, so a little bit two interesting takes. One who has no interest in the sequels. One who wants to watch all the sequels. So
No interest.
Okay, clearly there's a little bit of a dichotomy there. There's a little bit of a dichotomy there.
If anyone puts it on, she'll watch it.
All right. So the point being though is that we still do have a little bit more. One is more passive, one is more active about the idea of wanting to watch the sequels. So moving over.
Which is ironic, because she's usually not the like horror movie at all, and I tend to be more so that way. So we are breaking controversies here. Today's installment of Shocktober. This is a very shocking episode, if you will. All right, over to the next person, the guy who we only once again he shows up, he does his spiel at the beginning. He usually only gets out 2 or 3 thoughts during the actual watch along, but he always makes them impactful. Ankit, my man.
Oh, I think you didn't
think I was going to you, did you? This is why.
No.
What were your thoughts?
Well, I noticed Ankit was like super sucked into the film.
Yeah, no,
at one point.
it was the
And
same
I'm
thing. Every time we've had him on a watch along, it was the
man.
same thing with Toy Story 3. He was so into it that it's like, yeah, can you blame him? So, what were your thoughts on Saw?
Well, that's why I was getting sucked in, because I forgot a lot of what happens in it. Obviously, I remember all the big beats, but it was a lot of the things in between which I just forgot. And so when it happened again, I was like, oh shit, I now remember why I like this movie. Like when Amanda, I think that's her name, when she got the key out of the guy, I completely forgot about that whole sequence with the bear trap and
she's like going through his guts and everything.
And
too.
him being paralyzed. So that's why I was like, oh yeah, like there's a lot to remember with this movie. Still holds up. Very much still enjoy it. I don't know if I want to see the rest, only because there's so many movies out there. I just don't know if I can commit to like 8. But I am I'm curious to see what is going to come of that whole Spiral spin-off with Chris Rock and Samuel Jackson.
That's the other thing too that none of us talked about, which I'm actually kind of shocked that we didn't. But that'll be a conversation that I'll use in our wrap-up talks for the movie, because I completely forgot about that.
I am curious about like Robby. Do you know any backstory? Like, is it related verbatim or it's like a separate thing?
No, it's almost kind of a rebooted sequel within the same universe. It's supposed to take place, I think, within real time. So we're talking, 20 years later after this film. You're getting that a lot now, where you have these sequels that come out where you can bring in a new audience and they can watch the movie and still enjoy it. But if you did see the previous films, you'll get more out of it. So I think they do that just to kind of widen the umbrella for the audience that can.
Yeah. It's a very smart strategy, again, to kind of Force Awakens did that. Yeah, now my question is, because you did bring that point up, and I know this is what a couple of other movies done, is it doing the thing that Halloween did, where this sequel is only following the original, and it's not... Okay, so this is going to acknowledge all of the wide-ranging Saw canon.
So the problem with the Halloween film, and I agree with what they did with that, because the Halloween series, I always compare it to... Remember the old choose your own adventure books, like the That's what happened with Halloween. So there's 4 or 5 different timelines. And my mother, when I took her to see the new Halloween with me, and I originally brought that up to her, and I said, Jamie Lee Curtis is coming back. You want to go see the movie? And she goes, well, there's like 10 of these movies. I'm not going to watch 10 movies. But when you present it as, well, all you have to do is watch the first one, and then you watch this new one. You don't have to watch the 9 sequels. And you go, oh, well, I could do that.
Yeah.
Although the second one is a phenomenal film. I see what you're saying.
Well, the second one Carpenter wrote, and that had a big part to do with it. So again, my whole thing, I just
from the first, it feels like the same movie.
Yeah, that's what I did. I literally watched the original Halloween I think a week before the new one came to theaters, and I watched it. I'm like, okay, I'm like, this franchise isn't my favorite, but there is definitely something really interesting that I could just go right from that original to this. But again, I still want to know how he's invulnerable, because to my knowledge, he's still a regular human being. There's something supernatural about him, so they still haven't explained how he's invulnerable. So that's the one thing I will say. These new freaking movies better explain how he's invulnerable, because that's really starting to piss me off.
We have 2 more coming. We have, next year Halloween Kills, and then the year after that Halloween Ends.
Look,
and that's gonna wrap everything.
That's all I want.
Do you really want to know?
All I want is I'm sorry. This guy got shot 7 times. This guy's been burned alive. This guy's been fucking hanged. This guy's
he's been directed by Rob Zombie.
That too.
You know what? Rob Zombie's Halloween 2. that'll be a discussion for another day.
Yeah.
I will defend that to the grave.
Halloween 2 or
Yeah, it's
his
not-
Halloween
It's
2007?
not bad.
Halloween 2, I think, is a fantastic film. His
Okay.
second movie.
Okay. See,
and
I-
I think it has the best acting in the entire franchise by far. There's a lot of reasons for that. We can get into that another time. His first movie was fine. The backstory with Michael.
Yeah, it's a little.
The problem is you get this prequel that's like about a half hour, and then you have the last hour is the original film rushed.
Right. Pretty
movie-
much. The one thing I will say about that first film, though, the first film does give us Brad Dourif and Malcolm McDowell in a room together, overacting the shit, each trying to overact one another, and that is amazing in and of itself. Yeah,
Yeah, with the second one, he was able to just make his movie without the restraints of trying to fit in what Carpenter did. And I think it worked out better.
All right.
I'm a huge fan of the franchise. So.
Okay, that's an interesting. All right, over to Sean. Sean, we're finally to you, buddy. Again, you had some killer takes during this watch.
I had some killer takes. I don't know if any of them were about Saw.
That's the beauty of these watch-alongs. They're like a box of calculus. You never know what you're gonna get with them. So, what do you think of Saw?
I think I'm gonna watch it again because, like I said, this is the first time I've ever seen it, and just a peek behind the curtain, we couldn't really rock any sound, so I was just sort of like I was experiencing the story, which I actually loved. I will go into the time capsule film, and this is not going to be like something where I'm being like I'm not knocking the film for being a time capsule film. I'm actually applauding the film for being a time capsule film. Where this is, and I'm just going to steal takes from all y'all. Where it just said like this does feel like something from the 90s almost. But also it feels like it's the gateway to the next decade and it was literally, as we can, hindsight 2020, how you doing? Great year. We can look at it as, this is a gateway to what horror became in a good and a bad way. So we look at, first of all, what they used, and they used a lot of like David Fincher-esque kind of like, style there. Amazingly, like we said, like there was one scene that was just entirely green. So they had the lighting, they had the tone set up. And that was like the past of the movies that we saw in the 90s. And then we go into something new. And this is where something new was great. I talked about this before, where I just say that like Saw opened up something great. And Saw opened up just a mental torture type of situation. The issue with that is that there were then movies that took over and just did like, a dude sitting in a chair getting tortured by a guy for like a certain amount of time and then trying to escape. And then they said like, let's get that torture to be creative. I think that this plot, this like entire screenplay is magnificent. And so I think that that's what they decided to do. They're like, oh, we're going to make horror movies clever. And I have actually seen the second Saw, and I saw it when I had probably all of the beer inside of me that was from Providence. So at that point, I don't exactly remember.
Nice.
Like, I wasn't really like, what's going on with the character development? I was just sort of like looking. There wasn't really a lot of plot
we just found a new
details
segment.
going.
We just found a new segment. Sean pretends to be drunk and reviews movies. Oh man, we got to make that a thing.
Pretends.
No, he's pretending.
I'm having a couple of
That's
boys.
you're not an actor. He is drunk.
Oh man, yeah, to
But,
ruin the illusion.
But and just to go with that, Saw 2, like, I just a little bit of it, not much of it, but I knew that was like it did elevate it a little bit to what I felt was, once again, haven't seen it fully, so I shouldn't go, but it felt like a sort of theme park of the tortures where she has to jump into hypodermic needles and like he has to
I remember
like
that. He has to crawl through a furnace and shit like that.
It was those things where I was just like, okay, they're doing like a good fearful thing. They're bringing back the story from the first, which is exactly what you want to do in a world. So I'm not going to knock Saw 2, but then like it just gets out of hand with, like we said, Eli Roth movies just get a little bit nuts with the I won't even say the words schmorcher porn, but it is there we go. It is just a little bit like that kind of took over. Then, once again, as that moved on, we kept going with the clever horror films like Saw had. So there were growing pains that Saw was a part of in the modern horror. And that is something that I'm actually grateful for Saw.
Nice. Great take there. Great take. Again, and that's how you know that this man's a teacher. This man gave like the most rational, like borderline. Like I was waiting for like the imaginary PowerPoint presentation to pop up behind you. Like I was just waiting for it to happen. And now
in my other room, I have a little marker board right here.
Oh,
like,
nice. Nice. Yeah, I got my mini one that I have in the other room for trivia. Now, the man, the myth, the true star of this whole watch long, I think it's safe to say, Robby. I mean, has anything really changed as far as your love for this movie goes? Let's be real here.
I think it just reaffirms my love for the film and the franchise. And I get where some of you say, you don't feel the need to kind of go on because and that's fine because when this movie was put out and written, it was only thought of as one film. Like, like I said earlier, they didn't sit there and say, well, we're going to do 8 movies over 20 years. It's just, we got a couple of bucks. Let's get a couple of friends of ours and Danny Glover and see what we can do. And then, boom, it's a huge hit. But I think that only makes it even more iconic that they took this film that was only supposed to be one movie, stretch it out across 8 films, and now 9 coming up. And they all tie in so well. It's so cleverly written. The way they're able to intertwine everything and bring back what happened in 2 in part 5 and what happened in 1 in 3 or whatever. So if you do give it a shot and go along and look at it as a almost like a mini series because it just all flows well, I think you'll be really impressed on that level, the way it's written. And when I think of Saw, and when I think of its legacy, it's going to be a landmark film, not just in the horror genre, but even more than that, more broad than that. And I don't think of the great kills and the special effects, which are fantastic, right? And that's just, like I said, the sexy, the dressing on it. But it's the way it's written and the way it's constructed and put together. That's what I think of first when I think of it.
Awesome. Great take again from somebody who clearly, I think, kind of schooled all of us tonight. Let's all be honest here as to how this franchise goes.
Robby wins.
Props to Robby. Robby is the true MVP of this episode.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah. Now, just to wrap it up, I will say that Robby, congratulations, you did your job because again, just the combination of you offering all that insight. In addition to just me actually rewatching the movie a little bit more sober, a little bit more conscious, a little bit more analytical this time, I was finally able to kind of see past like the surface level complaints that I usually have the first time I watch a movie. And I was actually able to see like kind of the deeper genius that was involved here. And there really was. There was a lot of like just raw passion and raw kind of like that raw energy that you get when you're like making a first film. Again, James Wan and Leigh Winnell went on to make tremendous things. Again, James Wan directed arguably the most problematic Fast and Furious movie, which is the one where Paul Walker died halfway through production. Yep. James Wan did that movie, and it's the more I think about it, it might be one of the best Fast and Furious movies, just as far as that goes. Yeah.
But James Wan directed Aquaman, and oh god, James Wan directed Aquaman, and Aquaman's a cinematic masterpiece. Yeah. And I'm not even saying that with an.
I will defend that movie. I will defend that movie.
Octopus playing drum.
So good.
Do not.
I will defend that movie. I think it does have its good. It's not great, but yeah, it's just. I mean, this is the guy. He went on to create a horror empire. Like he created the Insidious movies, the Conjuring movies, like the list goes on as far as that. I think he did Dead Silence too, although somebody might have to fact check me on that one.
Was the first one?
Maybe. I think it was the first one.
Yeah.
I think. But yeah, and again, screenplay, brilliant. Acting is good for what it is. Again, it's a well thought out, really well put together movie. And as far as this is like factoring into the horror genre, again, it's funny because for all those horror tropes that I constantly complain about, I didn't really find a whole lot of them here. I really didn't. And that's the part that impressed me the most. Because again, the whole thing that I look for is I'm like, look, I'm a person, I don't like the horror tropes. I don't mind like I said, if anything, I'm like, okay, if you're going to give me all the horror tropes, fine, but have fun with it at the very least. Make fun of them shits. Go all out. Go ridiculous. And if you're going to be bad, fine. But go bad and go all the way. You know? Like that's the difference between the first and second Happy Death Day movies. The first movie knew exactly what it was doing and had a blast with its premise. The second movie got way out of hand and just got too stupid for its own good. Like that second movie expected me to believe that college students are capable of inventing time travel. That's a thing that happens in that movie. And yeah, just kind of in order to wrap up that very, very strange and lucid tangent. Yeah, this was a really, really awesome rewatch, and I had a lot of fun with it. So in order to kind of wrap this up, let's go around the table, just kind of give your overall star ratings as well.
Sure.
So whoever
I'll
wants to take
jump
this
in.
one.
Why not? First off, I just want to say, to Guy at the Movies, we love you. We hope everything's going good. And he put this together. So thank you, Joe.
Props
Go
to
and support
Joe.
his channel. Check him out. Follow him on Instagram and subscribe on YouTube. It's Guy at the Movies. And there'll be plenty more watch-alongs, Joe. So don't sweat it. They'll be fun to be had down the line.
I know he's Guy at the Movies, but I so want to call him Proposition Joe. I so want to call him Proposition Joe just because of how he put everything together and just like and for any of fans of The Wire.
That sounds so bad. I don't think I would personally want to be known as Proposition Joe.
That's a
That
great.
sounds like you have a record.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like he's proposing something.
Oh, I just think it's a badass nickname, but I guess I'm the only one.
Another
Wishful
thing
thinking.
You are alone in, dumb. Anyway,
Wishful thinking.
with that,
It happens. It happens.
With that being said, I mean, what are we doing? Star ratings out of 5, right?
Star ratings out of 5.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very solid film. I think today we got another 3.5 out of 5 on our hands, Dom.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's the difference between you and me with solid, I guess, when it comes to that. Ankit, out of 5.
4.5.
4.5. All right, Robby.
I love the film. It's not a perfect film. I think there are even better entries in the series, but I'd settle on 4 out of 5.
All right, 4 out of 5. All right, Cinephile sisters scores, individual and or combined, if you so choose.
Okay. Gotta give it a rewatch because I feel like having sound and also
Usually
looking at
helps.
it the whole time
Usually
might
helps.
impact. But I'm gonna say like I'm in the 4 range.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it might go higher.
I would agree with that rating.
All right, got it. So in the 4 range, so we're gonna go with there. All right, yes, got the high five and everything. Sean, your rating.
Well, I mean, I also had to watch it for the first time silently, and I just thought there could be a really funny, silent film cut where it's black and white, and there's just some quick title cards.
Right?
It's just like,
what was it like? Saw the Christopher Nolan cut.
But I would give it a 4 out of 5 based on what I've seen.
Yeah, and
it's not
the
perfect, but it's
the
pretty
silent
close.
people are going 4 out of 5 here.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I'm going 4 out of 5 too. This was a solid movie. Again, it's funny because without some of like the sillier sound effects, I will say, again, it definitely does amp up the seriousness of the story. So yeah, I'm going 4 out of 5. This was a solid watch. I'm very, very glad and happy about this rewatch. So people, this was once again the latest installment in our Shocktober series. Thank you to everyone, of course, who was involved in this panel today, as well as everyone who was in the live chat this entire time. This chat was going off like crazy. Props to Scott Snyder for getting us all those awesome comments in the beginning of the show. So before we all get out of here, everyone, once again, go around, promote it, say who you are, what it is that you do on the internet, and where the good people can find you. Start with, I don't know, who's next to me? Sean, you go.
All right, I'll go first. It's Math Teacher Movies on Instagram. And, I'll do the other shout out to Joe and just say, I also am his co-host, the Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean. So those two things, give them a follow and, give them a subscribe.
All right. Cinephile sisters.
And we are the Basic Cinephile on Instagram and Twitter, and also a blog post. And that's where you can find us.
Awesome. Can't wait. Robby, you're next.
On YouTube, you can get me at Reviews and Rankings with Robbie Sobel. On Instagram, it's Robbie_upgrade. And I'll be pumping out more content, especially this month. Everyone's all up on horror, so I got to capitalize.
Awesome. Dude, if your horror takes are anything like your take tonight, oh man, I'm looking forward. Ankit.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so Ankit here from the Casual Moviegoer. Follow if you love 60-second movie reviews. This month I'm doing a focus on horror, so I've already reviewed Host, the Zoom pandemic movie, Spree, the Joe Carey slasher movie, and then I'm going to be watching Possessor soon, the David Cronenberg. Oh, sorry, Brandon Cronenberg. Yes, the son of the Cronenberg flick. So, yeah, and then I also have a new episode of Bad Movie Date coming out at the end of the month. It'll be horror themed, so it'll be Scary Movie Date. And we actually watched a pretty decent horror movie, and there's some good reactions we have. So looking forward to releasing that.
Oh man, see it here. I thought you were gonna watch Scary Movie for the Scary Movie Date, but that would have been way too obvious, just like Scary Movie itself. So it would have worked.
And Bad Movie Date's also available on your Instagram, right?
Yeah. Oh yes. Everything is on Instagram. Yeah.
Cool.
The Casual Moviegoer. And people, once again, thank you for tuning in to another Shocktober event. Make sure you stay tuned to the channel in order to see all the new upcoming events. We've got 2 full weeks left in the month of October. We're going to be making the most of it. Like I said, we're going to be watching Tucker and Dale versus Evil next week on AJ of AJ Reacts 2's channel for the meta and alternative section. That's going to be a blast. I just watched that movie recently. That movie is already one of my favorite horrors because I love horror comedy. I think it might be my favorite subgenre, but I'm not going to go too much on that tangent. We've got next week, Chris has some reviews coming out that he will get into for his section, but we're wrapping up. This is going to be the most important one for both everyone that's here and everyone that's in the comment section. The final day of the month, October 31st, Halloween itself, the final Saturday of the month. We will be watching Halloween. That's right, Chris. There we go with the timing. Halloween on Halloween itself, the original 1978 John Carpenter's one. It will be live that Saturday at 9 p.m. And people, everyone who was involved in that panel will be in costume, and there will be a costume contest throughout the watch along. So people, submit your costume pictures. There will be a prize. Chris,
I'm gonna win.
who will be the first? What will the first place prize be?
Yeah, so our good friend David of Flicks Talk here on YouTube, he is creating a clothing line. I mean, we are all creative people. We know creative people. We do creative things. He came out with these awesome shirts that say slasher, and within each letter is a different slasher that has made an impact on pop culture and also resonates with David as a huge horror fan himself. So that we're giving that away as the top prize. It's going to be it's a very high-end t-shirt. David prints on good quality. Trust me, I've been in bands for a very long time. We did not print on the American Apparel that he's going with. So just saying, it's
Chris, I think I still have your Meridian. I think I still have your stash shirt that I got from you.
Yeah, Gildan all the way, man. But David takes it a step up. He had to outdo us, but I'm glad that we're able to give that amazing prize away. And then Dom, for the second place prize, is giving away a personal film from his movie club.
That is true. I have a somewhat, not entirely extensive, but I have a somewhat extensive film collection. And consider the fact that most films are digital now, I figure, hey, why not? That would be a good second place prize winner. You guys know that I am more than willing to give my stuff away. Just look at the Talkin TV award ceremony that I put out by myself in order for further example of that. But yeah, whoever wins second place prize will be getting a Blu-ray from my collection. I still have yet to decide what said Blu-ray is. I think I'm going to make it a surprise that I will unveil on Halloween night for whoever the second place winner is. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait for all of you to hopefully be involved in that. Again, only 2 weeks left in the month, but we're going to make the absolute most of it. For all of us here, follow us on our social media pages, Facebook and Instagram at Talkin TV Podcast, no G, and on YouTube. Once again, please click the subscribe button, that bell button, that way you get notified every time we put up new stuff. We put up new content on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Click the like button. Leave us a comment. Let us know what your guys' thoughts are. It's the only way we have of communicating with the rest of the community. I'm sure there was a better way to say that, but I couldn't think of it in the moment. So, with all that being said, Chris, do you have anything else to add?
I mean, I just feel like you may or may not have a message to.
I mean, I always do, but I know, but I need you to give me approval for everything, so that's why I always go to you first for these things.
All right, well then I'll say everyone's links will be in the description. Thank you guys again so much for joining us. This was a blast. You're more than welcome back on the channel.
All of you,
you already
seriously.
know you'll be back, but the rest of you guys, amazing, incredible time. And Dom, do you have a message to leave the people with here tonight?
From myself, Chris, Ankit, Robby, Sean, the Cinephile sisters, watch more fucking movies, people. We out.
Bye.